Broadcasting Corporation, KBC. On today's order paper, the Senate is scheduled to consider a number of motions as well as a number of questions and statements. And key among the motions that the Senate will consider today morning is the continuation of the debate on the motion on declaration of cattle rustling and budgetary as a national disaster and establishment of a special fund for victims. And this is sponsored by Senator William Cheptumo, who is the senator for Baringo. And in this motion, is requesting the Senate to resolve that the national government, through the Ministry of Interior and National Administration, and in collaboration with the Council of Governors, to declare cattle rustling as a national disaster and establish a national task force on cattle rustling and budgetary to, among other things, investigate the causes of the rampant cattle rustling and budgetary in the said region and the country at large, and establish the extent of suffering and loss and damage of cattle rustling and budgetary occasioned to those communities in all the affected counties in the country, and also to create a special fund to mitigate the losses suffered by and to compensate all victims of cattle rustling. In case you are joining us, senators are streaming to the chamber in readiness for today's morning sitting. In the chamber, there is the Senator Kwambua in readiness for today's Senate sittings. And then there is a motion by the Select Committee on County Public Investment and Special Funds on its consideration of audit reports of the water service providers for the year ended 30th June 2019, 30th June 2020, and 30th June 2021. And then the Senate will also continue the debate on the County Boundaries Bill that is sponsored by Senator Moses Kajwang, and this is a resumption of the debate that was interrupted on Tuesday, the 5th of March, 2024. And then there are a number of cabinet secretaries that are expected today to answer questions from members of the Senate, and key among the CSs that are expected are the CS for roads and transport, and also the CS for gender and also the CS for national treasury and the economic planning. And the key among the questions that will be requested today and expected to be answered by the CSs are the following. There is the questions to the Ministry of Roads and Transport and the CS Kipchumba Murkomen. And among the questions are question number 10 by the Senator for Kisumu, Senator Professor Tom Ojienda, Senior Counsel. Will ask the CS for Roads and Transport on to provide a comprehensive data and records on road accidents involving tractors transporting sugarcane from farms to factories in the sugarcane growing areas in Kisumu County since 2017. And then you'll also seek to know the number of accidents that are attributable to unroadworthy tractors and incompetency of tractor drivers, respectively, and what the government is doing to strengthen and streamline regular monitoring and enforcement of licensing of tractor drivers, as well as the inspection of the tractors. And then the Senator for Nandi, that is Senator Samson Cherargei, will also seek a statement and ask for the CS for Roads and Transport to provide an overview of the performance metrics of Kenya Airways, KQ, particularly for the gross and operational profit or loss for the half year ended June 2023, explaining how the profits of law or laws thereon compare against other key industry players. And then I'll also, the same Senate will also request the CS for Roads and Transport to provide a comprehensive account of all financial support, including government bailouts and loans from the Export-Import Bank of the United States of America, extended to Kenya Airways over the last 10 years, highlighting the respective amounts received and the purposes for which the support was extended. And also, we'll also request the CS to answer which foreign consultancy firms have been engaged by KQ in the last 10 years to revitalize the airline, and could the CS also indicate the respective amounts paid to each, as well as provide an overview of the recommendations made by the firms. And then the Senator for Nandi County will still ask the CS for roles on when the ongoing project for the expansion of Kerenga airstrip will be completed. And I can see the procession of the Speaker has approached the chamber, and it is preceded by the mace, symbolizing the authority of Parliament. And the presiding Speaker today is Jeff Emerson Kingi. We'll hand you over to the Senate sittings, and you can follow us live on YouTube. Welcome. I've been your host, Jeremy Chabari.
Na tuombe. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu, tukusihi ututazame kwa neema nyingi na baraka sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kutuita kwa nyadhifa za uongozi katika jamhuri yetu. Tukuomba utuajalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu, na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Clerk, do we have quorum? Sergeant at Arms, kindly ring the quorum bell for 10 minutes.
The Speaker of the Senate has ordered for the quorum bell to be rung, and this is to enable the senators to achieve quorum before the commencement of today's morning sittings. And this is in line with the standing orders of the Senate, particularly standing orders 39 and 40 on the quorum. It has to be present before the Senate can begin its sessions or a sitting, and the required members of the Senate are required to be in the chamber before the start of the sitting are 15 members. So that is the process that is ongoing now to request the senators to come and appear in the chamber for these proceedings to continue. And today, as you had indicated, we are expecting CSs for roads and transport, and also national treasury and economic planning, as well as the CS for gender, culture, arts and heritage. That is CS Honorable Aisha Jumwa. And among the questions include the question by the Senator Cherargei, the Senator for Nandi, where you'll be seeking statement or answers from the CS for roads and transport on when the ongoing project for the expansion of Kerenga airstrip will be completed, as well as the total budgetary allocation for the project. And then you'll also seek a statement from the same CS on the status update on the project undertaken for the construction and upgrade of roads undertaken by the national government in Nandi County since 2013, and explaining any discrepancies between the contractual and actual dates of completion. And then there will also be questions by Senator Enoch Wambua Well, you'll seek the state question and answers from the CS for Rons still on the status of compensation of residents to whose parcels of land were acquired for the construction of Kibwezi, Adi, Mutomo, Kitui, Migwani Road. And then the same CS will also ask the same, I will also answer the same, the question from the same member of parliament from Kitui, that is Senator Eno Kwambua, on the current status of Idhokwe airstrip in Kitui County, and whether there are any plans to upgrade it to commercial status, and also to provide an update on the construction progress of Siekuru and Mutomo airstrips in Kitui County. And then the Senator for Meru County, that is the Deputy Speaker, Senator Kadhuri Murungi, will also seek us clarification and answers from the same CS for Roads and Transport on the schedule of pending bills currently owed by Kenya Urban Roads Authority and KENA to contractors engaged in road construction projects across the country, clearly indicating the proportion that constitute accumulated interest and the penalties from delayed payments, and the delay, what occasions the delay in settling those bills that are due for payment by the two government entities. And then the Senator for Nairobi County, Senator Edwin Sifuna, will seek a statement from the CS for Treasury and Economic Planning on the failure by eCitizen digital platform to process and reflect payments made to some institutions such as NHIF. And could the CS also explain the steps taken to remedy the situation? And the Senator wants to know where the convenience fee charged and all other payments that fail to reflect on the platform end up. And then the Senator for Kirinyaga County, James Morango, will ask the CS for Gender, Culture, and Arts and Heritage on the plans by the government to establish a public library in Kirinyaga County, and also the actions that our government is taking to ensure establishment of public libraries in all counties where there is none. And I believe this is a follow-up to the unbundling of the libraries function that has been ongoing to all the counties. And then still on today, there will be a notice of motion. And these notices are two. That is a report of the Standing Committee of Finance and Budget on the 2024 Budget Policy Statement. And these will be requesting the Senate to adopt the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the 2024 Budget Policy Statement that was laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 5th March of 2024, pursuant to Section 25(7) of the Public Finance Management Act and the Senate Standing Order 1868 of the Senate to approve that budget policy statement. And also there will also be a notice of motion seeking renewal of the mandate of the ANDOC Committee on the compensation to the Kenyan victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States of America Embassy in Nairobi. And they will be seeking that the mandate be expanded, or rather to renew that mandate for a further term until June 19th of 2024 to enable it to complete the task that it was set up to do. And on the key agenda for today, that is the notice of motion on the budget policy statement. You can see, let's confirm whether there is quorum.
Honorable Senator, whose child is that? Clerk, can you proceed to call the first order? Honorable Kalwale, please just approach the chair as the clerk does that.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion.
The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Finance and Budget. Majority, can you proceed if you have instructions to do that?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, apologies on behalf of the Chair of Finance and the whole committee. We have been in session from 7 in the morning. We've just ended. I therefore rise, Mr. Speaker, to give notice of the following motion, namely a report of the Standing Committee on the Finance and Budget on the 2024 Budget Policy Statement, that the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the 2024 Budget Policy Statement laid on the table of this Senate on Tuesday, the 5th March 2024, and pursuant to Section 25(7) of the Public Finance Management Act and Standing Order number 186-8, the Senate approves the 2024 Budget Policy Statement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Chairperson, Ad hoc Committee on the compensation to the Kenya victims of the 1998 bombing. Senator Kavindu or any member of that committee may proceed to give notice.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion. That aware that at the sitting of the Senate held on 29th June 2023, the Senate resolves to establish an ad hoc committee to investigate the compensation to the Kenyan victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States of America Embassy in Nairobi and report back to the House within 3 months of the establishment. Further aware that on 3rd October 2023 and on 15th November 2023, the Senate resolved to review the mandate of the ad hoc committee for a further period not exceeding 45 days and a further period not exceeding 100 days from 10th November 2023, respectively, to establish the committee to finalize, to enable the committee to finalize and table its report in the Senate on or before 18th February 2024. Appreciating that the committee has a lot of work to execute before conclusion of its expiry and reporting to the Senate. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves to renew the mandate of the ad hoc committee for a further period not exceeding 100 days from 11th March 2024 and to table its final report in the Senate on or before 19th June 2024.
Next order, clerk.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
No, honorable senators, we had scheduled 7 questions for response by 3 CSs today, this morning. That is CS Transport, CS Treasury, and CS Gender, Culture, Arts and Heritage. However, at a sitting yesterday of the SBC, we did consider 2 letters, one from the CS Treasury and one from the CS Transport, indicating that they will not be able to be present today for purposes of responding to their queries. And the reasons they gave were found to be valid by SBC, and therefore those questions relating to the Ministry of Transport and the Ministry of Treasury will be rescheduled to a later date. Now, this morning, of course, that then leaves us with the CS Gender, Culture, Arts and Heritage. Now, this morning I received a letter signed by the Honorable CS Aisha Jumwa, indicating that due to conflicting schedule, she will not be able to attend this session for purposes of responding to the question relating to her ministry. Therefore, honorable senators, we do not have a CS this morning to respond to these questions. The question time, therefore, naturally collapses, and we shall move to transact other business or other businesses as scheduled in the order paper. Yes, Honorable Kathuri.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for that communication, which I'm not contesting. But Honorable Speaker, you know this is a house which has a lot of work to do. And Mr. Speaker, when scheduling this business, there's a lot of considerations that is done, especially at the SBC, Senate Business Committee. So, Mr. Speaker, when our CS postpones appearing before the House this very morning, when we have scheduled business already, to me, Mr. Speaker, I think if we go that route, then we'll be disrespecting this honorable House. So, Mr. Speaker, there must be some time frame that the CS at least should communicate, and also the reason that the CS is giving that is a conflicting schedule of activities that she has is not good enough. Mr. Speaker, unless that schedule has been affected by the end of state, then that we can consider. But if it is our own programs, Honorable Speaker, I think we should really not go that route, and this House should not be very comfortable when the CS suspends or communicates in the very morning that he or she is supposed to appear before the Senate, and then we take that matter lying down, Mr. Speaker. This House must be respected. And Mr. Speaker, if we continue allowing this kind of business or this kind of manner, then, Mr. Speaker, nobody will ever respect this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, with a lot of pain that honorable senators woke up very early in the morning to beat the traffic, especially this Gong Road honorable senator for Nairobi. You should really raise that matter because, you know, most of us live in your county, but we are really struggling to get in the morning. Those are the matters that really need to be discussed. So, Mr. Speaker, we sacrifice a lot, even our schedules, our other programs, so that we can be in this House as hard as possible to wait for the honorable CSEs. But when they frustrate us after doing all this sacrifice, Mr. Speaker, I think this is not honorable enough. I know the CS loans communicated early enough. The CS, which is the other CS? Treasury, National Treasury. During the communication, maybe before yesterday. So, Mr. Speaker, I think we, personally, as a member for Meru County, Senator for Meru County, not the Deputy Speaker, so that I don't conflict myself or your office. I'm talking as the Senator for Meru County. I think this CSA should do better than that, Honorable Speaker. I thank you.
Senator Sifuna.
Mheshimiwa Spika, nilikuwa nimekinoa Kiswahili changu kwa ajili ya ujio wa waziri Aisha Jumwa ili tuweze kupatana moja kwa moja. Kwa hivyo utaniruhusu nizungumze Kiswahili hicho ili kisiende bure, hata kama hajafika. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza nimjulishe ndugu yangu seneta wa Meru kwamba nimefanya kikao pamoja na mwenyekiti wa kamati ya usafiri Mheshimiwa Karungo Wathangwa na yule ambaye ni balozi wa nchi ya Japan kuhusu shida za trafiki katika barabara ya Ngong Road, na ametuahidi kwamba serikali ya Japan kupitia ushirikiano na serikali ya Kenya itazindua mfumo wa mabasi ya kasi katika barabara hiyo ya Ngong Road, na natumai kwamba itapelekea wewe kupata nafuu unapofika kazini hapa katika bunge la Senate. Jambo la pili, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kwamba mimi ni baadhi ya wale ambao wanakaa katika ile kamati ya SBC ama huduma za bunge hili. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa kweli tunapata msukumo sana kutoka kwa hao wenzetu ambao tunawakilisha katika kamati ile, kwa sababu ukiangalia ratiba ya masuala ambayo yalikuwa yashughulikiwe leo hii, Mheshimiwa Enoch Wambua ametoka Kitui leo asubuhi ili aweze kuuliza masuala yake kwa yule waziri wa usafiri. Kuna masuala mengi hata mimi nilikuwa nataka nimuulize yule ambaye ni waziri wa masuala ya kifedha kuhusu mfumo mzima wa e-citizen ambao Wakenya wengi wanatusukuma tufanye kitu juu yake. Kwa hivyo ni jambo la kuvunja moyo sana, haswa kwa waziri Aisha Jumwa ambaye nilimuona juzi, Mheshimiwa Spika, akiwa maeneo ya kule Western akiwarai wakazi wa Vihiga kutoruhusu viongozi fulani kuzungumza iwapo maoni yao yatakinzana na maoni yake ama maoni ya watu wa mrengo wake. Na nilishtuka sana kwa sababu najua mawaziri wafai kujiingiza katika siasa, na aliibua hisia kali sana kwangu kwa sababu alizungumzia swala ambalo lilikuwa linanihusu wakati moja nikiwa katika eneo bunge lake.
Seneta wa Nairobi.
Mheshimiwa Spika, namaliza.
Hoja ambayo iko mbele ya Seneti kwa sasa,
naam,
ni kutokuwepo kwa mawaziri. Walioyafanya wiki iliyopita ama mwezi uliopita hayaambatani kamwe na hoja ambayo iko mbele yetu.
Nimekuelewa Mheshimiwa Spika.
Uzungumze pengine unashtumu vikali ama
ndo nachanga huo ukali, yani Spika, tafadhali.
Unaanzia mbali sana.
Kwa dakika moja tu nimalize.
Umeanzia mbali.
Yani kitu ambacho nilikuwa nataka kiibuke wazi ni kwamba mawaziri hawa wanapata nafasi ya kufanya mambo mengine, lakini shughuli ya bunge hawatilii kipaumbele. Alikuwepo kwenye mazishi, nimetoka kwenye stesheni ya redio ya KBC, wananiambia alikuwepo jana na yeye katika kituo hicho hicho. Kama anapata fursa ya kwenda mazishini, kukemea viongozi, kwenda katika vyombo vya habari, kwa nini asije hapa na sisi pia tupate fursa ya kuzungumza naye? Kwa sababu dadangu Gloria, Mheshimiwa Senator Gloria Orwoba, wiki iliyopita alitukemea sana, haswa viongozi wa vyama ambao walishiriki ile mdahalo ama dialogue ambayo ilikuwepo, ya kwamba tuliwacha masuala ya kina mama nyuma. Nilikuwa nataka waziri aje hapa adhirishe kwamba si kwa kukosa kuwasilisha hoja zetu kama viongozi wa ODM, bali kuna masuala ambayo yalikuwa yanafanyika ndani ya wizara yake. Kwa hivyo ni yeye pekee alikuwa anaweza kuniondoa katika mtego uliokuwa umetegwa na Mheshimiwa Gloria. Lakini sasa hayupo hapa. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa, mimi nataka nikemee vikali kukosa kuja mbele ya bunge kwa Mheshimiwa Aisha Jumwa, haswa kwa sababu wenzake wengine walikuwa na ile courtesy ya kuandika barua kwa Spika. Heshima, asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Walikuwa na ile heshima kwa bunge hili kuandika barua kusema kwamba ama katesi, naambiwa unaweza sema katesi Mheshimiwa Spika. Wakaandika barua kujulisha wabunge kwamba hawatafika. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka nikuombe swala moja tu. Wakati ambapo tulikuwa katika mkutano wa SBC, niliuliza swala, je, kuna njia gani ya kuwajulisha wale ambao wameuliza maswala mapema kwamba maswala yao hayatapata kujibiwa kwa sababu waziri ameandika barua? Lakini nikaelezwa kwamba kutakuwa na ugumu kwa sababu wenzetu hawa wakiambiwa kwamba waziri haji na wao pia hawaji. Tunataka tu tungependa Mheshimiwa Kadhuri Murungi apambane na hali yake kule Ngong Road, afike hapa hata kama waziri hayuko tuweze ku...
Senator Wameru, hoja ya nidhamu yako ni...
Niko kwenye hoja ya nidhamu.
Hii imeruhusiwa, hii hoja yangu imeruhusiwa vizuri na Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, sio vema kiongozi seneta wa Nairobi, yale mambo yanazungumzwa kwa mkutano SBC, ni bora kweli aje hapa kwa Senate aweze kuweka haya maneno wazi, yale yanazungumzwa kwa kikao cha SBC. Na mbona anatoa siri ya kamati ya SBC, anakuja kutoa hizo siri hapa? Sababu Bwana Spika.
Asante sana Seneta Wameru. Seneta Wameru, utendakazi wa Seneti unafanyika katika ukumbi huu na pia katika kamati zetu, na hakuna siri ambayo tuweza kuificha, maanake kazi ile yote ni kazi ya Seneti. Kwa hivyo Seneta wa Nairobi amefanya vyema kuweka paruanja ile hali ilivyokuwa kule. Endelea umalize hoja mchango.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kuniopoa kutoka kwa mikono ya Mheshimiwa Wameru. Mheshimiwa, kwa kweli mimi ni mwakilishi pale SBC wa hawa wenzangu hapa, na ni muhimu kwamba yote ambayo yanaendelea pale tuweze kuwajuza, kwa sababu ulivyosema wewe mwenyewe hamna siri. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nataka kuomba tu ya kwamba kuwe na mfumo, hata kama arafa itaandikwa kwa yule seneta ambaye alikuwa ameuliza swala mwenyewe, basi na kuweka paruanja ulivyosema, lakini mwenye kuuliza maswala hayo ajulishe kwamba kwa bahati mbaya ama kwa sababu moja ama nyingine, yule waziri ambaye ulikuwa unataka kumuuliza maswala hatafika leo, ili watu waweze kujipanga Mheshimiwa Spika. Lakini ni vizuri tuwe hapa kwa ajili ya shughuli zingine za bunge, na natumai kwamba kikao hiki hakitatibuka kwa huu utovu wa nidhamu unaoonyeshwa na wale mawaziri kama Aisha Jumwa. Nakushukuru Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, kwani wewe utanifundisha vile nitazungumza katika Senate?
Senator Boni.
Thank
Don't
you.
engage your colleagues.
Thank you.
Talk through the chair.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I have this inkling that the minister who has failed to come rudely this morning is holed somewhere following these proceedings now, just to see how we are going to handle her case. And I want to request you, Mr. Speaker, sir, that you allow the House to exercise Standing Order number 51D. And because the minister is watching these proceedings, 51D, Mr. Speaker, states that the Senate may, where a cabinet secretary fails without reasonable cause to appear and respond to questions under this part, move a motion to censure the cabinet secretary. This minister is now ripe for motion of censure because she has never appeared before this House. And severally, we have asked her to come and respond to matters of grave national importance. She's a letdown to the structure of government. She's failing the executive, and with due respect, without being seen to be using the name of the president, I put it to the president that this is dereliction of duty. This minister is not fit to hold public office. If she was, she would not have failed to find time to be here this morning, and last week find time to go and consult with the leader of the opposition in waiting at his Capitol Hill office. Why does she choose to transact matters on gender, 2/3 rule, at Capitol Hill, and she cannot come and appeal the same in this House? Mr. Speaker, you must use the vast powers in your possession. You protect the integrity of the Senate. A minister cannot believe that she can hold us at ransom. There are so many young women. There are so many middle-aged women. There are so many women of advanced age, Mr. Speaker, who are fit to serve this country as minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise under Standing Order number 105 on statement of fact, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the good senator from Malinya, the senator of Kakamega, has indicated that when the minister went to Capitol Hill, the minister was transacting on particular agenda, which he has said was agenda about women. Can he prove to this House that he's privy to the conversation that took the minister to Capitol Hill, whether they were formal conversations or informal conversation, and whether indeed he's privy to the agenda?
Senator Eddie,
yes.
Let's have time to transact business. You know, there was a press conference after the meeting, and everything is in the public domain. So just conclude, Senator.
Mr. Speaker, I want to appeal to the young senator from Migori.
Don't appeal, just proceed to conclude your
yes,
remarks.
That if we must defend certain positions, let us defend them reasonably.
I've already told him that, Senator.
Thank you.
Just proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we worked so hard to form this government. You and I, and many others, we were not working hard so as to allow people in office, people who would then, Mr. Speaker, be tiptoeing in and out of office. We wanted people to stamp their authority so that our women, in fact, I believe, what is the name of, yes, Senator Gloria, I think she's the youngest in the House. She should be appointed the minister in place of this mama who doesn't have any idea of how important it is to appear before this House. Oh, Miraj is the youngest. She was quarreling me, that's why I did not.
If you're done, kindly take your seat. Senator Enoch Wambua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to condemn in the strongest terms possible this trend that is actually gaining root in this House, that cabinet secretaries decide whether to attend committee meetings or plenary, and they know somehow that they can get away with it. Mr. Speaker, I have argued elsewhere, and I want to argue here, that we are the people, we are the leaders, to give this House the dignity that is due to it. And it will not happen, Mr. Speaker, if we entertain a situation where honorable senators wake up early on Wednesday morning, fully aware that they are coming to interact with cabinet secretaries on matters related to dockets that these cabinet secretaries had. And out of 3, not a single CS shows up. The Speaker, in other jurisdictions, something would give. In other jurisdictions, the Speaker, the chair would stamp the authority of this House and demand that if there is a cabinet secretary within the boundaries of this country, they must appear before this House in the next 30 minutes, and that would happen. The Speaker, this casual way of dealing with the Senate, and we are not even overreaching our mandate as a Senate. The Constitution, not even our standing orders, the Constitution is very clear. Article 153, on the decisions, responsibility, and accountability of the cabinet. It states very clearly in black and white that a cabinet secretary, I'm reading verbatim, Article 153(3), that a cabinet secretary shall attend before a committee of the National Assembly or the Senate when required by the committee and answer any question concerning a matter for which the cabinet secretary is responsible. Mr. Speaker, that statement is explicit as explicit can get. The decision by the cabinet secretary for roads, that's where I'm going to begin, because I have two questions that are listed for a response from the CS responsible for roads. Mr. Speaker, the CS for roads knows very well, wherever he is, that the matters that I'm raising, those questions, are matters that he addressed himself to when he was a senator in this house representing Elgeyo Marakwet. Now he is a CS, he can make a decision on the compensation of the people from Kibwezi all the way to Mwingi, persons affected by a road project, and he just decides to stay away. The Speaker, I take great exception to that decision. Lastly, on the matter of Senate CS for gender, Aisha Jomwa. Mr. Speaker, I was really excited about today's sitting because there is a matter that we would have put to rest today. There have been accusations and counter-accusations from our honorable lady senators and from the women of this country about the place of the two-third gender rule in the NADCO report. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to have a face-to-face conversation with the CS responsible for that matter on the floor of this house so that she can tell us what role she played. Mr. Speaker, we would have put this matter to rest today because it is her who approached the NADCO committee and said, let us remove this matter from your discussion because there is something that I am doing and I'm very sure I will succeed. That's a matter that we would have held a conversation around today, Mr. Speaker, and settled that matter. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I'm still pursuing the line that because you have the power, Mr. Speaker, and that power is given to you by the supreme law of the land to demand that in the next 30 minutes, CS Aisha Jumwa makes an appearance on the floor of this Senate so that we transact that business and we get done with it. Mr. Speaker, I submit.
Senator Mungatana.
Asante sana Bwana Spika kwa kunipa nafasi na mimi nitoe maoni yangu. Bwana Spika, leo waziri wa fedha hakufika hapa Seneti, waziri wa barabara hakufika Seneti, waziri wa jinsia pia hakufika Seneti. Bwana Spika, ile kanuni ya kudumu 51D ambayo Seneta Khalwale ambaye ameitaja iko na adhabu kubwa sana kwa hawa mawaziri ambao ni kuleta hoja hapa ya kuwatoa kazini. Lakini Bwana Spika, mimi ningekuwa nimefikiria kwamba SBC wangekaa tubadilishe hii sheria ama tuiongezee na hapo chini. Mbali na kutumia nyundo kuua inzi, Bwana Spika, tungeweka kwamba iwe ni automatic ama ni mtu akikosa kufika kwa mara ya kwanza, Spika bila kuuliza swali ni $1,000,000. Mara ya pili ni $5,000,000 na mtu analipa mwenyewe, waziri analipa mwenyewe. Mara ya tatu ndio hii kanuni ya kudumu 51D iletwe hapa hoja. Na nilikuwa naomba wale wenzetu ambao wanakaa kwa SBC tutengeneze kitu ambao tunaweza kuitumia. Iwe ni automatic, sio lazima speaker akitoa ruling. Umekosa ni $1,000,000. Ukiwa umekosa mara pili ni $5,000,000. Mara ya tatu ni hoja, iwe ni automatic, sio kitu ambayo tunakuja kudebate. Hivi Bwana Spika, tukigeuza kanuni zetu itatusaidia kupeleka message kwa hawa wenzetu ambao wamekaa kwa nafasi hizo kwamba ni lazima tuheshimu seneti na tuheshimu nafasi ambazo sisi tunafanya kwa niaba ya wananchi. Asante sana Mheshimiwa.
Senator Manzo
of Kenya. Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Her Excellency Alicia Bárcena has a profound interest in strengthening Mexico's bilateral relations with Kenya and in continuing to cooperate in the multilateral field, building upon the extraordinary relationship that our countries developed during their latest term in the United Nations Security Council. Secretary Bárcena is also committed to promoting closer ties between Mexico and Kenya. Mexico recognizes your government's offer to lead a multinational security support mission in Haiti and looks forward to the mission's success in benefiting the Haitian people. Mexico expects that the bilateral cooperation project regarding the traditional maize processing technique, nixtamalización, contributes to Kenya's food security. We are ready to look into new development cooperation projects. We appreciate the interest expressed by the Kenyan government agencies in learning about the experiences and practices of Mexico's government institutions, and we are ready to share them with you. My government is also interested in continuing reciprocal high-level visits and in advancing the negotiation of various pending legal agreements. We look forward to their swift signature. Finally, Your Excellency, President Ruto, I would like to express the desire of the Mexican government for Kenya to open a resident embassy in Mexico City. This would certainly allow for a further deepening of our excellent relations between our peoples and our governments. Thank you.
Congratulations, Ambassador, and welcome to Kenya. My very best wishes on your appointment to represent your great country, your brother country in Kenya. And I want to assure you of my support and that of my government and the people of Kenya as you discharge your responsibilities of building an even stronger foundation for the relations between Kenya and Mexico. Thank you very much for our support in our mission to support humanity in Haiti, and also your request for us to deepen our relationship and expand our collaboration and cooperation on both the diplomatic, business, and multilateral level. You can count on my support. My officials here will make sure that you get the necessary support to discharge your responsibilities. Again, Ambassador, congratulations on your appointment. Welcome to Kenya. My very best wishes, and you have my support. Thank you.
did you get here? A little bit more than a month ago.
Okay, yeah.
Great.
Okay, yeah. So you're not quite...
Viewers, which are currently witnessing at State House Nairobi this morning. It is the presentation of credentials here at State House Nairobi. First up was Enrique Javier Ochoa Martinez, the ambassador of Mexico. Now, this is after the Mexican Senate unanimously confirmed the appointment of Enrique Javier Ochoa Martinez as the ambassador to Kenya. There he is, and of course the next ambassador is up next as we are headed over to
Your Excellency, I have the honor to present to you the Ambassador Designate of the Republic of Serbia. Please.
It is a great honor to present to you, Your Excellency, the letters of credence by which His Excellency Aleksandar Vučić, President of the Republic of Serbia, appoints me as Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary to the Republic of Kenya, along with the letters of recall of my predecessor. It is a privilege for me to represent my country in Kenya. I look forward to a productive relationship with Your Excellency and Kenyan officials to build on our bilateral ties. President Vučić extends his best wishes to you and to the people of Kenya. We sincerely hope to host Your Excellency in Belgrade soon. Africa is a continent of the future, and Serbia is a long-standing friend of Africa back from ex-Yugoslavia time. We consider Kenya as a country with outstanding role in place in regional and continental frame. I have come to Kenya as a messenger of our readiness to further strengthen friendship and cooperation between our two countries. We will work together to open the door for greater bilateral trade and investments. We are ready to participate in the development projects in Kenya, but also to become one of the key centers for the distribution of Kenyan products. Looking forward to finalization of necessary legal framework enabling the employment of Kenyan citizens in Serbia. Belgrade was chosen to host Specialized Expo 2027, and we hope that Kenya will take part in it. I'm eager to learn about this amazing country from our Kenyan brothers and sisters, and to promote a greater understanding of Serbia, its heritage, economic potentials, and national priorities, including those in the context of preservation of its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Serbia is sincerely grateful to friendly Kenya for not recognizing the unilaterally declared independence of so-called Kosovo in respect of the UN Charter, international law, and legally binding UN Security Council Resolution 1244. Asante sana kwa ukarimu wako na sitaacha juhudi zozote za kuwa balozi bora wa urafiki kati ya mataifa yetu mawili yanayojivunia.
Congratulations, Ambassador. And on behalf of the people and government of Kenya, welcome to Kenya. Congratulations on your appointment to take over the huge responsibility of consolidating the relationship between Kenya and Serbia. And when I met your president, we discussed among the things you have mentioned here on export of labor from Kenya and see how we can build that relationship together. So I look forward to assisting you. And my officials here will work with you to make sure that you succeed in what you're doing, because in your success is the collective success of Kenya and Serbia. So, Ambassador, again, congratulations on your appointment. Welcome to Kenya, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Well, that is the next ambassador. That is Danijela Kubrilo-Matic, the ambassador designate of Serbia. Now, she has spoken on the bilateral relations between the Republic of Serbia and the Republic of Kenya. Currently, the president is being shown the embassy employees that are currently working at the Embassy of Serbia, and of course they'll be having a photo session as the next ambassador designated to the Kingdom of Thailand will be ushered in. That is Danijela Kubrilo-Matic, the ambassador designate of Serbia. Now, the bilateral relations between Kenya and Serbia is traditionally friendly. Both Kenya and Serbia enjoy a cordial relationship, with Serbia having an ambassador in Nairobi, Kenya, and Kenya having a consulate in Belgrade. Now, the next upcoming ambassador is the Marcot Janakot, the ambassador designate of Kingdom of Thailand, who will be ushered in momentarily. You know that the relationship between Thailand and Kenya established their diplomatic relations on the 25th of July in 1967. Here comes the ambassador designate of Kingdom of Thailand, that is Morakot Jankumwat. She will be heading over, trying to give her speech and of course hand over her presentation of credentials to President William Ruto. Let's listen in.
Your Excellency, I have the honor to present to you the ambassador designate of the Kingdom of Thailand.
Your Excellency, allow me to present the compliments of His Majesty King Mahawachiralongkorn, Prawachiraklao Chao Yu Hua, and the people of the Kingdom of Thailand to you personally, and the people of the Republic of Kenya. It is my earnest wish that I shall succeed in my endeavors to further promote our cordial relations, happily existed for the past 57 years. During these years, numerous constructive partnership activities, including promotion of trade and investment, public health, tourism, culture, and development cooperation have been keys to our cooperation at all levels. Thailand has been sharing with Kenya under the South-South cooperation in universal health coverage, blue economy, and agriculture, leading to the establishment of the Thai-Kenya Agro Technologies Learning Center in Nyeri, among others, all of which correspond to Kenya's development priorities. Thailand, under my team, will further strengthen and expand the existing collaborations and introduce new potential areas to match the interests of the peoples of the two countries. It is my intention to deepen the relationship with Kenya in all possible areas. On the political front, I look forward to working closely with my colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs of Kenya to see the success of the second meeting of the Joint Commission between Thailand and Kenya in Bangkok. I now have the honor to present to Your Excellency the letter of recall of my predecessor and my credentials by which His Majesty King Mahawachiralongkorn, Prawachiraklao Chao Yu Hua, King of Thailand, has appointed me to be the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Kingdom of Thailand to the Republic of Kenya.
Congratulations, Ambassador, and welcome to Kenya. And on behalf of the government of Kenya, we welcome you as you begin your tour of duty in Kenya. I want to assure you that the officials of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will work with you to consolidate our relationship along the lines you have mentioned, in the areas of blue economy, in the areas of universal health coverage, in the areas of agriculture, so that we can share experiences and work together towards making sure that the people of Thailand and the people of Kenya close ranks on matters that are multilateral and also on matters that are global. And to assure you, Madam Ambassador, that you have my support and that of the government as you take over this responsibility. Again, on behalf of the Government of Kenya, congratulations on your appointment. Welcome to Kenya. And I look forward to working with you as we further and deepen and expand the relations between our two. Again, congratulations. Great. Thank you.
Well, that was the ambassador designate of the Kingdom of Thailand, currently meeting high-ranking government officials from Kenya. She joins the long list of ambassadors who have reported to the country, and of course cementing the relations between Thailand and Kenya, established of course in their diplomatic relations on the 25th of July 1967. Now the cooperation between the two countries has expanded and prospered in many areas, from trade and investment, agriculture, tourism to public health and development cooperation. Now the ambassador as well as President William Ruto have vowed to work together in this coming. Now it is the photo session she will be taking with the president as we usher in the next ambassador, who will be the ambassador designate of the Republic of San Marino, Giovanni Conti. He will be ushered in once the president concludes the photo session with the ambassador designate of the Kingdom of Thailand. Now, a little bit of fact is that Giovanni Conti, the ambassador designate of the Republic of San Marino, who will be ushered in just a few. Now, the two nations are set to start and bolster their diplomatic relations with San Marino, an independent and sovereign member of the international community. The president is heading over back as we usher in Giovanni Conti, the ambassador designate of the Republic of San Marino. Now the procedure will be the same. He will be the fourth ambassador to present the credentials to President William Ruto. Let's get to hear from the state protocol on Giovanni Conti.
Your Excellency, I have the honor to present to you the ambassador designate of the Republic of San Marino.
His Excellency, this ceremony has a great significance for the Republic of San Marino. The accreditation of the first ambassador of the Republic of San Marino in Kenya gives start at the bilateral relation between two independent republics. I have the honor to confirm my total commitment to bring our two states closer. I will work actively to contribute to construction and solid bilateral relationship for a mutual act level and friendship and cooperation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Ambassador, congratulations. And my very best wishes as you start your tour of meeting in Kenya. I know you are the first ambassador to represent your great country in Kenya. And therefore you have the honor to lay the foundation firm between our two countries. I am very confident that your time here will be spent in consolidating the relationship between our two countries. And in many of the areas that are mutually beneficial between our two countries, we are going to work together. Officials from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will support you to make sure that you succeed, because in your success is the success of our two countries. So welcome again to Nairobi. Welcome to Kenya. I wish you the very best as you begin this very important assignment that has been given to you by your country. And again, to congratulate you, to welcome you to Kenya, and to assure you of our support, collaboration, and friendship as we do this for our two countries. Again, Mr. Ambassador, congratulations. Thank you.
Well, you have just witnessed history there. That is Giovanni Conti, Ambassador Designate of Republic of San Marino. He will be the first ambassador to report to Kenya. Now, the two nations are set to start and bolster their diplomatic relations with San Marino, which is an independent and sovereign member of the international community. Now, the president as well as the ambassador have assured to maintain an extensive diplomatic network as well as an active foreign policy and international presence. Now, as the next ambassador is set to be ushered in, the Ambassador Designate of Republic of San Marino will be heading over to a photo session with President William Ruto. The photo session is currently being carried out. If you're just joining us, our dear viewers, that is history there. Giovanni Conti will be the first ambassador to report to Kenya all the way from the Republic of San Marino, which is an independent and sovereign member of the international community. Being ushered in, the lastly will be the Ambassador of Designate of Kingdom of Eswatini, with residents in Addis Ababa. And of course, he will be ushered into the VIP session. The last person and the last ambassador to be ushered in closer to the president will be Mahlaba Mamba, the ambassador designate of the Kingdom of Eswatini with residence in Addis Ababa. Let's get to hear as the ambassador is currently ushered in to the podium.
Your Excellency, last but not the least, I have the honor to present to you the High Commissioner designate of the Kingdom of Eswatini.
Your Excellency, allow me to first and foremost express my appreciation and gratitude for the opportunity granted to me to present to you the letters of credence by which His Majesty King Mswati III appoints me to serve in the capacity of High Commissioner to the Republic of Kenya, along with letters of recall of my predecessor, His Excellency Promise Msibi. I feel honored and privileged to present to Your Excellency fraternity greetings from His Majesty the King for the Ingwenyama of the Kingdom of Eswatini. His Majesty recognizes and values the long history of existing cordial bilateral relations and cooperation that exists between our two brotherly nations. I assure you, Your Excellency, that I will continue the work of my predecessors. It is my desire to carry out responsibilities in a manner that will fulfill mutual interest of the two countries. Thus, Your Excellency, I'm committed to work tirelessly with Your Excellency's government through His Excellency Ambassador George Orina in Addis Ababa to strengthen our bilateral ties and cooperation. Your Excellency, Mr. President, the Kingdom of Eswatini appreciates and commends the important role you play in strengthening regional integration and cooperation across borders in East Africa, and more broadly in the African continent. Through your international and regional cooperation, the Republic of Kenya greatly contributes to the building prosperity, peace, and security for all Africans. Your Excellency, the Republic of Kenya is well known in my country and globally for its beautiful landscapes and vast wildlife preservation. This is a good practice which the Kingdom of Eswatini is equally committed to. Eswatini, Your Excellency, Eswatini and Kenya share similar and common historical experiences that continue to bind us in seeking a changing destiny of our people. It is therefore my desire, Your Excellency, to explore further new areas of cooperation between our two countries. I'm counting on your able and committed officials to assist me in bringing this desire to fruition. Your Excellency, I thank you very much, and asante sana, Mr. President.
Ambassador, congratulations on your appointment to this very important responsibility of consolidating the relationship between Kenya and Eswatini. My very best wishes as you take over this very important responsibility, and as you said yourself, there is a huge wealth of experience to share between our two countries. And I look forward to working with you, and officials from Foreign Affairs will be there to assist you both here and in Addis to make sure that you succeed in your responsibility, because in your success is the success of our two peoples and our two countries. Again, Ambassador, congratulations on your appointment. Welcome to your tour of duty. We look forward to working with you, and we are confident that these relations that have been built over time will move to the next level under your stewardship. Congratulations again, Ambassador, and my very best wishes as you discharge your responsibilities. Congratulations again.
Well, that is the last ambassador to present credentials to President William Ruto. Now he will be ushered to greet high-ranking government officials from Kenya. Then you can see the Prime Cabinet Secretary, that is Musalia Mudavadi, and of course the State House Comptroller, as well as other high-ranking government officials. Now you can see that Mahalaba Mamba, the ambassador designate of the Kingdom of Eswatini, with residence in Addis Ababa, currently exemplifying what their country showcases. You can see currently he's wearing an attire from his own country. Now he has assured President William Ruto that both countries that continue to establish diplomatic relations between the two nations, which of course was established back in 1970 on the 18th of May, a few years after Kenya gained its independence. Now these were the 5 ambassadors who have reported to Kenya. It all started with the ambassador from Mexico, that is Enrique Javier Ochoa Martinez, as well as Danija Kubrilo Matic, the ambassador designate of Serbia. We also have Morakot Jemkot, the ambassador designate of the Kingdom of Thailand. We also have Giovanni Conti, the ambassador designate of the Republic of San Marino, who of course made history as the first ambassador reporting to Kenya. And right now the president taking a photo session with Mahalaba Mamba, the ambassador designate of the Kingdom of Eswatini, with residence in Addis Ababa. Also we can see the Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi joining. Now those who are the 5 ambassadors, they will be joining the long list of 11 new ambassadors and high commissioners that late last year President William Ruto received credentials from. Currently they are being ushered into a VIP section where the president will continue to have an tete-a-tete with the 5 ambassadors who have joined the long list of 11 new ambassadors and high commissioners. You remember last year President William Ruto at State House Nairobi received the 11 members as well as assuring that they will continue with their diplomatic ties, bilateral as well as multilateral relationships. Then you can see the ambassadors meeting each other, and of course the president will be joining them shortly. That is the VIP section, and of course they will be having an tete-a-tete. That has been the session this morning, our dear viewers. That has been the morning session where the presentation of the credentials happened of 5 ambassadors who have reported to Kenya. Now I would like to hand you over back to Broadcasting House to continue with your normal programmings. Good morning for now.
Hapo tukaweza kuwa tuliweza kusucceed na tutakuwa tunawaita, na sasa kwa kikao hiki tuo kitu kimoja, hakuna mgawanyiko. Nataka kusema ametukosea aswa mimi nikiwa ni senator wa Embu County, ambaye siku ya leo ni siku kubwa katika Embu County, ambaye governor wa Embu County mchapakazi amejikakamua na kuongea na wale wafanyikazi ambaye ni wa county. Anaenda kwa kikao ya parliament ya Embu kuambia vile amefanya kazi kwa kipindi ya mwaka mmoja, na sasa ni aibu kubwa sana kama mimi singehudhuria pale, kwa sababu najua kwa hiyo kikao inafaa ni governor na senator vile kazi imefanyika. Kwa hiyo nataka kuambia waziri wa barabara na usukuzi amefanya mambo ambaye si mazuri, kwa sababu watu wa Embu County kutoka Makutano kwenda Mwea kwenda Embu Tharaka Nithi mpaka Meru wanataka kujua barabara itapanuliwa namna gani iwe kama zile zingine, kwa sababu kama kuna county imetengwa ni county ya Embu. Ya pili, watu wa Embu County walikuwa wameniambia nisikanyange pale mpaka nikuja hapa niulize Murkomen uwanja ya ndege atatujengea lini, kwa sababu watu wa Embu wamekubali kulima, tunalima miraa, na unaona mambo ya barabara imeleta shinda, imekuwa ni mambo ya ajali, na wamekubali waweza kujengewa kiwanja ndio tuweze kupeleka miraa yetu huko ng'ambo, ndio tuwe na pesa ambaye ni pesa mkononi na mambo ya sile vitu zingine. Pia walikuwa amenituma nikikuja leo niseme kutoka Karaba kwenda Makema na kwenda Machanga, hiyo vile parapara vile itatengenezwa iwekwe lami, na pia kutoka Kiritire kwenda Karie na kwenda Kiambere, kwenda huko Kiambere huko bahari stima inatoka vile itawekwa lami, na pia mpaka kwenda upande zingine. Kwa hiyo parapara
waziri hayuko kusikia hayo yote malalamishi.
Angekuja, hiyo ni maswali yalikuwa yametumwa na watu wa Embu ni waulize.
Sasa hayuko.
Na hiyo, na kama hayuko lakini amekosea watu wa Embu County. Embu County ni sub county ine, tungemuuliza hiyo maswali kwa sababu tunataka miaka ambayo inakuja Embu iwe inatembea vizuri. Ya pili ni waziri wa fedha. Waziri wa fedha amekosea aswa. Sisi ni wakubwa yake katika kikao hiki ya Senate. Unajua Bwana Speaker, nilikuwa nimejiandaa kumuuliza miezi tatu ambaye Senate wafanyikazi wa madrivers na security hawajalipwa pesa, na alilipa wafanyikazi wa bunge. Na pia unajua hii, kama unjua Bwana Speaker, ni miezi 3 maofisi yetu haijalipwa pesa na waziri wa fedha. Hiyo ingine nilikuwa nataka nimuulize, kwa kipindi ya miaka mingi walimu walikuwa na sinda, na mpaka saa hii tulienda tukafanya operesi sisi maseneta, tukaona mtu akistahavu akiwa miaka 60, ile swali ningemuuliza anakuwa barua anapata haraka, lakini unakuta tumefuatilia stresa iko na sinda. Kwa hivyo hiyo ni maswali ningemuuliza. Kwa hivyo mimi naunga mkono vile watu watashukuru hatua, lakini mambo ya kuatimua siko hapo. Serikali ya Kenya Kwanza haisemi mambo ya kutimuana, ni mambo ya kusemesana, ndio tuweze kuona vile serikali ya Kenya Kwanza itafanya kazi. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Senator Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also arise to add my voice to what is being discussed. Mr. Speaker, Article 124 of our Constitution mandates this House in the National Assembly to establish committees and make standing orders for the orderly conduct of the proceedings of the House. Mr. Speaker, therefore, our standing orders, as the full force of the Constitution of Kenya. So that, Mr. Speaker, the provisions of Standing Order 51 all the way to 51D as the full force of this Constitution. Mr. Speaker, this is the assembly of the national leaders of our country, elected, nominated to deal with matters of concern to our counties and the county governments. And how do we do so, Mr. Speaker? We do so through the various structures in place, including asking questions the CSS. Mr. Speaker, it is important for us to realize that the institution that sought this House to amend the standing orders, Mr. Speaker, is the President himself, who requested both National Assembly and Senate to amend the standing orders so that the CSS are able to appear and answer questions of concern to our electorate, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, it is paining and disappointing, Mr. Speaker, that when the time and the date is scheduled for our cabinet to appear, they don't. And Mr. Speaker, I want to agree perhaps that there are situations where they write to you as our speaker, giving justifiable reasons why they should not appear. Mr. Speaker, it is indeed acceptable that our CS should be able to, in good time, be able to address the House why they are unable to appear. But, Mr. Speaker, my concern is that the trend is continuing to avail. So that, Mr. Speaker, my worry is that in some few, as we proceed, this avenue of these senators being able to use to deal with matters of concern to their counties is going, Mr. Speaker, to diminish. Mr. Speaker, that particular Standing Order 51D or non-attendance of cabinet secretaries, Mr. Speaker, the only punishment provided for there is to censure. And that is what Senator Ocheng was raising. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with the proposal that we might have to enhance, apart from censoring a cabinet secretary, Mr. Speaker, let us enhance the punishment. And Mr. Speaker, when governors don't appear before committees of this House, Mr. Speaker, you know what they always do. They are supposed to pay a fine of 500,000, if I'm not wrong, Mr. Speaker. So it is important for this House, Mr. Speaker, to assert its authority on this position, so that a fine of an amount that can be agreed by this House should be put in our standing order number 51D, Mr. Speaker, in addition to the provision of moving a censure motion and to censure cabinet secretary. Mr. Speaker, Baringo, for example, the county I come from, and in all the other counties, Mr. Speaker, we are facing a lot of challenges. And Mr. Speaker, I can testify before the House that the questions we ask these CSS when they come here, Mr. Speaker, our people are keenly following, Mr. Speaker. And I am aware, even in my county, Mr. Speaker, sometimes the questions are asked here. When I go to the county, the members of the public are able to say, yes, we saw you, we heard you asking this question. So, Mr. Speaker, the value addition to our representation, the value addition to the citizen of our country, Mr. Speaker, through this procedure of cabinet ministers appearing before us, Mr. Speaker, is really, really important. And so, Mr. Speaker, I think my concern mainly is, so what from today? What happens tomorrow? I think, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank you because, Mr. Speaker, I have listened to you issuing statements compelling and telling the cabinet secretaries to appear before the House. I think you have been very clear, and even the other House has been very clear. But I think what will make the CSS, Mr. Speaker, to appear here is when we enhance the fine from this censure motion proposed by Article Standing Order 51D to a situation where they can pay fines. Mr. Speaker, we have the capacity, we have the means, we have, Mr. Speaker, the opportunity as a House to implement this. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to join my colleagues and say that it is important that you assert your authority as our Speaker and as a House, so that, Mr. Speaker, we have a solution to this situation, which is not enabling us to represent our people well, Mr. Speaker. So I join my colleagues in supporting that position.
Senator Mandago.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute in this. Honorable Speaker, first I want to join my colleagues in saying it is not in order for cabinet secretaries to absent themselves from answering questions in this House. Honorable Speaker, the purpose of this session was to make sure that the general public of the Republic of Kenya are able to get direct answers to their issues from the people responsible at the policy level, at the national government and at the county level, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, when cabinet secretaries fail to attend these sessions, they not only fail the Senate and Parliament, Honorable Speaker, but they also fail the people of Kenya. That notwithstanding, Honorable Speaker, this amendment that we brought to this House to allow cabinet secretaries to appear before us, Honorable Speaker, was a position that was developed by the Kenya Kwanza administration, led by our party leader, who is now the President of the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, when cabinet secretaries fail to appear before this House, they are not only failing Parliament, but they are also insubordinating the appointing authority, Honorable Speaker, because this was the position of the Kenya Kwanza administration, that the answers to the public can no longer be passed through many channels, but should come directly from the holders of the office so that the citizens can directly get from them. This would enable the people of Kenya, Honorable Speaker, when cabinet secretaries visit various parts of this country, to be able to refer them to the question and answers they give. Honorable Speaker, this evasion of cabinet secretaries from appearing, not only in this session, Honorable Speaker, but even before committees of Parliament, must be firmly dealt with, and I concur with my colleagues that we must invoke the necessary powers of this House to make sure the attendance is observed. Honorable Speaker, for the Cabinet Secretary for Gender, Honorable Speaker, this House was very expectant to address the matter of gender parity in government and also in Parliament, Honorable Speaker. This is a matter that has been canvassed in this country for over 30 years. There was only one opportunity available through NATCOM, Honorable Speaker, that this matter was going to be settled once and for all. I was eager myself to ask the Cabinet Secretary who removed the gender agenda from the NATCOM menu, Honorable Speaker, so that women leaders in this country should also not be going around saying we are fighting for women's rights, we are representing women, but the very women are undermining the success of the women. No wonder, Honorable Speaker, the old adage says the enemy of women is actually women. And therefore, failing to appear before this House, the Cabinet Secretary for Gender has actually failed the women of this country, because this was the opportunity for her to explain what our ministry is doing in order to make sure that that agenda is kept alive and that matter is settled once and for all, because we have an administration that is keen to ensure women are involved in leadership and decision-making position in this country, Honorable Speaker. Finally, Honorable Speaker, as a House, I want to agree with my colleagues and even be persuaded further that the fines for non-appearance should be enhanced. Honorable Sotsi, Honorable Speaker, had proposed an amendment of increasing the fine to 2 million. I am now persuaded that it should even go to 5 million. This kind of contempt can only be met with a harsher punishment, Honorable Speaker. I support.
No, Honorable Onyonka Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to actually reiterate what my colleague, Senator from Senator Mandago, what he has been raising, the issue he has raised. Mr. Speaker, if you remember in 2000, I think 8 or 9, during that time I was at the National Assembly with you. And you remember when cabinet ministers, even Honorable Boni Halwale was there, and I remember Honorable Mungatana was there. Mr. Speaker, anybody who assumes that when a cabinet minister comes to make a presentation on a national matter, that maybe that minister could be wasting his time, or we who are going to listen to the contributions and discussions are actually wasting our time, is wrong. Mr. Speaker, the first thing is that the Kenyan public is interested in listening and hearing how the ministers are going to articulate government policy. Then they will be answering those questions which are critical, because running a country, Mr. Speaker, frequent times you'll have crises, you'll have matters pertaining to emergencies and all that. And then sometimes, Mr. Speaker, that is the reason I wish many of the cabinet members in the KK government would understand that them coming and answering this question, first, they continue with the historical precedent. And number two, the public is very curious and always constantly listening to what we say and what we articulate in terms of trying to solve the issues that affect our country. Mr. Speaker, I really hope that the CSS will take this House seriously, that they will in fact be, if need be, I plead that with my leader, Honorable Cherargei, and the whip, Honorable Halwale, to make a phone call to the president and tell him his ministers are misbehaving. They are letting your government down. Because we come here not because, Mr. Speaker, we are on holiday. We are dealing with matters of national importance. And when a cabinet minister comes, like the other day when Honorable Rinturi came, Mr. Minister, I was very happy, because you could see he's seized of the matters, he's discussing these matters intelligently, he's coming in with some solutions. That's what we are looking for in our country, Mr. Speaker. We are not looking for drama and things which are irrelevant. And that's why I'm really pleading with the CSS and the state officers who are being asked to come and attend these meetings. Because, Mr. Speaker, if you look at our committees, the CS Finance, the Controller Budget, the Auditor General, they are always coming. When we ask them to come, extremely good. Why is it that the cabinet members of His Excellency William Ruto's government abdicating their responsibility? And Mr. Speaker, I also want to plead through you and my colleagues who have access to His Excellency the President, tell him that many of these ministers are actually just randaranding, doing nothing. They are going on trips. Let them leave those things. Kenya has issues. Let them settle down on the ground. Let them intervene. Let them come to our counties. Mr. Speaker, I have not seen a single CS in Kisii since I became a senator, except Moses Kuria. And yet, previously, the CSS need to move around the country. They need to come and see what is going on.
What is the point of order, Senator Munyihaji?
He's my brother, Senator Onyonka, from the great county of Kisii, in order to say that he has never seen any CS in Kisii, yet CS Machoge comes from Kisii.
Mr. Speaker, I actually wanted to re-emphasize the point. I have actually not even seen Honorable Machogu. Yes, he's in Meru, he's in Moranga, Tharaka Nithi, he's going to Kwale, and it's the responsibility of the office.
With Honorable Machogwa, I wouldn't even raise a query about it for the simple reason that he's running all over, and I see what he's doing in terms of going to the different ministries, different schools and different institutions. I think the portfolio, that is a ministry, my leader, Mr. Speaker, that I would have wished that it had a deputy minister. Because the Minister of Education is too busy, the minister is all over the place. I don't think he's really having his hands on the cake, as they say. But that's a discussion for the other day. I would like to finish, Mr. Speaker, by saying that let the cabinet ministers in the government today realize that they need to do much more, that our expectations are much more, that we know many of them are qualified and many of them can do a good job. But we also know that others are very lazy, Mr. Speaker. So I would like to reiterate what Honorable Mandago has said. That fine that Honorable Sosi has brought, we need to make an amendment. Let's change that thing to 5 million, Honorable Halwale, so that it acts as a deterrence. So that even if, Mr. Speaker, if a minister under CS knows that he's not going to be around and he has gone for official duty, it is automatic. He should write a letter which is acceptable, because we are not idiots. We know that the cabinet minister is traveled somewhere on official business, and it is important that we empathize on that. But this narrative where people just assume that, I hear this, Honorable Halwale, Mr. Speaker, frequently. Oh, the Senate is nyumba ya wazee, hakuna kitu mnafanya, there's nothing you do there. No, this house is serious. And let these ministers realize we'll be very serious with them. Because other than them giving an apology, we are going to start fining people, we are going to start censoring people, and you know many of them, Mr. Speaker, don't know that under Chapter 6, if somebody comes here and we censor them and ask and say that they cannot hold public office, there's nothing they'll do. The president is the only one who's going to sympathize with them. But if the president realizes that this guy is lazy, why would he save him? He just fires him, brings another one who can perform. With those very few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support and let this House be treated with respect and decorum. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, he's already concluded and taken his seat, Senator Kathuri. Honorable Senators, let us end this matter. He's already yielded, so the information certainly is. So, Honorable Senators, I have had your compelling contributions as far as the failure of CSS to attend Senate session for purposes of responding to questions. Now, these compelling contributions that you've made, they would have been relevant if they're made within the context of a motion of censure. In the absence of a motion of censure, what honorable senators are doing is merely to lament. We cannot be reduced to a house of lamentations. This is not the first. Senators are lamenting. This may not be the last. Senators will lament. You need to stop lamenting and take it to the next level. And honorable senators, the next course of action is provided for under our own standing orders. If you read Standing Order 51D, it gives the option available to this House where the House feels that a CS has abstained themselves without reasonable cause. Otherwise, for how long are you going to vent your frustrations like you've done today? We have taken 2.5 hours venting our frustrations, our pain, our disgust, our disappointment. Next week on Tuesday, if CSS don't appear, we'll continue playing the tape. The other following Tuesday, if they don't appear, you will continue playing the tape. Honorable senators, that must stop. You have the sword. The sword is not with the speaker. You have the sword under Standing Order 51D. You can elect to continue lamenting, or you can draw the sword and strike. It's up to you. Let us end it there. Next order.
Order number 8, motion. Declaration of cattle rustling and banditry as a national disaster and establishment of a special fund for victims. Resumption of debate.
Senator Cheptumo, just approach the chair, please. This is a resumption of debate that was interrupted on Wednesday, the 28th of February, 2024. At that juncture, Senator Ledama Olekina was making his contribution in form of seconding. He had a balance of 13 minutes. He is not in the House, so I will allow Senator Fatuma Dulo to take it from there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me make my contribution to this motion on the declaration of cattle rustling and banditry as a national disaster and establishment of a special fund for victims. Mr. Speaker, I wish to support this motion because this is long overdue. Because of the menace that we have in the country as a result of cattle rustling, which has changed from the previous thinking that it was a cultural behavior among some certain pastoral communities. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the cattle rustling issues that are affecting many parts of this country, and I must appreciate the effort put in by the current CS Interior, CS Kithure Kindiki, in trying to stamp out the issue of cattle rustling in some areas. But I believe this is something that is continuing even with the kind of effort the government is putting in. And I believe the proposal by Senator Cheptumo that we must create a special fund is also valid, and also the proposal in declaring cattle rustling as a national disaster is also valid and very important. Mr. Speaker, if I may give an example of Isiolo County, you will see that the pattern has changed from cultural behavior to business. Because you can imagine animals actually taken today, within few hours, they find themselves in the market, which means it's a business now, the issue of cattle rustling. And I believe the government should be able to put in more effort in actually getting rid of cattle rustling, because you will find that still we have the issues of proliferation of small arms and weapons in our country. Most of the areas within where cattle rustling is happening, you will find that many people are having firearms that are not even licensed. We have made efforts as a country to make sure that all those who own firearms, they have licensed them. But unfortunately, still people have those firearms unlicensed. And there is government presence all over, even at the location level and sub-location levels in so many areas, which clearly means, Mr. Speaker, that there is a lot of laxity as far as dealing with cattle rustling in this country is important. And I think we have to be serious this time round and make sure that these issues are dealt with. Cattle rustling, Mr. Speaker, has affected also the social fabric within our communities. You will find, Mr. Speaker, that in many areas, the situation on the ground is affected. Communities' lives are affected. You will find that there is economic hardship, Mr. Speaker, where you can imagine some families, they have over 1,000 animals. Within a day, it's all swept away without any recourse. I believe this is really a very serious matter because the issue of pastoralism and keeping animals, it's way of life and livelihood for so many people. But unfortunately, that has never happened in our country, where we feel that serious effort is put into place to make sure that the issue of cattle rustling is dealt with. Mr. Speaker, you will find that in the areas where cattle rustling is happening, there is no development at all. Because if there is a project coming up in a certain area, people will say, oh, there is insecurity there. That is the reason why we have not even completed the projects that are proposed in those areas. And I have several examples within even my own county. The areas that border Wajir, Garissa, Samburu, those areas, Mr. Speaker, and even between Isiolo and Meru, where developments are affected simply because of cattle rustling and insecurity. And that is something that actually takes people backward and brings in the issue of marginalization in this country. And we must take, Mr. Speaker, this very serious. Mr. Speaker, unemployment is also another factor that is affecting most of our youths in our country. Because you can find in a place like Isiolo, the only employment that some people can access is actually herding animals. But now, when these animals are taken away, you will find even a boy or a girl with an A, they are unable even to go to university. And if the only source of livelihood that are animals, they are taken away, and that is where they are actually getting their employment in herding, then it means these youths are actually reduced to nothing, Mr. Speaker. And this matter has to be taken very seriously. In payment of school fees, you will find that most of the pastoralists, they rely on these animals to pay their school fees for their children. Mr. Speaker, if these animals are taken away, most of our kids end up actually not even finishing their school or their schools or even getting to school because cattle rustling is affecting our communities so much. Mr. Speaker, this is actually a matter that this country has to take very seriously. And I believe the proposal of a special fund will actually mitigate some of the factors or the challenges we get as a result of cattle rustling. Because if you have 1,000 camels and they are taken away, if there is funding or a fund that is somewhere, they can be compensated, Mr. Speaker. But without fund, that means Kenyans are really suffering, especially in those areas where cattle rustling is prone. Mr. Speaker, I believe we have a solution to this problem, if only as a country we are serious. Even in budgeting process, you will see that there is serious action put into agriculture. But cattle rustling, very minimal. Because if you look at the fertilizer input, where billions are put into fertilizer actually purchase, what happens to pastoral communities? Nobody is talking about even this particular, establishing a fund that has been proposed by the Senator for Baringo. Mr. Speaker, we should have equal actually support from government if agriculture is given 2 billion livestock should also be given 2 billion in establishing, for example, like fund or even restocking that we have discussed in various fora in this country. Mr. Speaker, I believe the effort put in by government is a short-term measure that helps the communities, but we need a serious action where issues of cattle rustling that has been resolved. Because this is a matter that is happening in most of our counties in daily basis. You can imagine we have actually tried even to bring in NPR to complement the regular police, but this is not helping at all. You see, you will find that the people who are dealing with cattle rustling, they have sophisticated firearms that are actually, even our own regular security are scared of even following up those animals when cattle rustling is taking place. Mr. Speaker, I do support this motion because it's going to give us a solution to the current cattle rustling that we have in our country, because we have tried several measures that are not actually assisting our communities. National disaster, of course, we have tried that also in issues of drought, but still we have challenges. And I think as a country, we have to focus in helping the source of livelihood for our people, because poverty level in so many areas where cattle rustling is happening is taking place. Because if you have 500 cows, they are taken away today, you end up getting nothing. Drought is actually killing our animals. Cattle rustling is taking away the animals also. So where are we going to go as pastoralist communities? This is a challenge that we need to seriously put our heads together and get up a solution for it, because unless we do that, the many challenges we have in our country, counties and the country are not going to be solved. Mr. Speaker, you will find that, in fact, in many of these areas, the issues of drugs are cropping in because animals are taken away and the people end up doing nothing. Especially in areas like Isiolo, you will find youths getting into drugs, Mr. Speaker. They end up doing nothing, and some of them, if they don't get employment, and they see that cattle rustling is happening in certain areas, of course they will say, why not? Mr. Speaker, I'll stop here in support of the motion and believe that whatever we are going to propose as far as this motion is concerned, we should cascade it down so that we can be able to deal with the issues of cattle rustling in our country and also in our counties, because it's a real national disaster in our country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Fatuma Nduro, you are to second the motion so that we can open it.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I do second. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Senators, I propose the question that aware that cattle rustling banditry is a major menace and security threat in the south and north rift regions and other regions of the country, concerned that the menace has since left irreparable and negative socioeconomic impact, which include but are not limited to increased number of widows, widowers, orphan children, poverty, displacement of people, leading to internally displaced persons, NDPs, disruption of education, health programs, and other economic activities owing to the destruction and or closure of educational, health, and other institutions. Further, concerned that the people living in the affected regions have been denied the enjoyment of their socio-economic and political rights as guaranteed to them under the Bill of Rights as enshrined in Chapter 4 of the Constitution. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves that the national government, through the Ministry of Interior and National Administration, in collaboration with the Council of Governors, 1, declares cattle rustling a national disaster. 2, establish a national task force on cattle rustling or banditry to 1, Lawman 1, investigate the causes of the rampant cattle rustling and banditry in the Senate region and the country at large. And Lawman 2 establishes the extent of suffering, loss, and damage the cattle rustling or banditry has occasioned to the communities in all the affected counties. And 3, create a special fund for mitigating the losses suffered by and in compensating all victims of cattle rustling or banditry and settle all internally displaced persons occasioned by the menace. Senator Chalagay Samson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity. Mine is to support this motion that was brought by Senator William Cheptumo, the Senator of the great people of Baringo. Mr. Speaker, we have waited for this motion because of the current occurrence. I know in Samburu the other day, an MCA had been killed, and even in Baringo itself, Mr. Speaker. But I want to put it to the nation that this issue of cattle rustling is not only in North Rift and South Rift alone, Mr. Speaker. This issue of cattle rustling and banditry affects over 7 counties. And let me state them so that for the record and Kenyans to understand, so that it does not appear we are discussing issue of either only Samburu or Baringo. Mr. Speaker, it affects 7 counties. That's a population of 8.8 million Kenyans are affected by this menace of insecurity through cattle rustling and banditry. And that is Baringo, Elgeyo Marakwet County, Turkana County, Isiolo County, Marsabit County, Laikipia County, and finally West Pokot County, Mr. Speaker. So this is like a half of the country, Mr. Speaker. So this is a national disaster in its form and design, Mr. Speaker. It is unfortunate that this has been commercialized. Cattle rustling has been commercialized into a criminal enterprise that continue to deny Kenyans from these 8 regions plus or 8 counties plus or more than 8.8 million, Mr. Speaker, that continue to suffer because their livelihood, Mr. Speaker, is cattle. It's livestock, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, and even Meru, sorry, I forgot Meru. Also, I saw the CS of Interior was with members, colleagues over the weekend. Meru also has been affected, Mr. Speaker. So this issue, and sometimes also Nandi and Kisumu, so it is an issue that is cross-cutting, Mr. Speaker. Cattle livestock theft, I'm told even in some parts of this country, in Western Kenya, people are also forced to close their cows and sleep with them in rooms because of also livestock theft. So this cattle livestock theft, cattle rustling and banditry is a national disaster, Mr. Speaker. What we want to ask our brother, Professor Senator Kithure Kindiki, Majority Leader Emeritus and the Minister of Interior, is to declare this a national disaster, Mr. Speaker, and create a special fund. And it is within the rights, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for the last 6 months, I think in 2023, we lost through cattle rustling and banditry over 600, over 100 civilians, Mr. Speaker, and 16 police officers. So there are many families who today they are without their sons, their daughters, their children, their spouses, Mr. Speaker, because of trigger-happy banditry, Mr. Speaker. These regions have been made a playground of criminals, organized criminals, Mr. Speaker. And that is why even when you look, I had sponsored a bill on the livestock, against livestock theft, Mr. Speaker, of theft of livestock produce and theft. Because we were targeting, Mr. Speaker, we need to hit, to punish. Because apparently, Mr. Speaker, the financiers of this well-organized criminal enterprise in these regions that I've mentioned, Mr. Speaker, and are people who are staying in Nairobi. And they are just using innocent young men and women who have been transformed into criminals to steal livestock, and they end up in the most of the plates that we are eating in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, could we unknowingly be financing cattle rustling and banditry? Because most of these livestock are being slaughtered here in Nairobi and other major towns. And we buy and enjoy the sweet meat thinking that this is maybe that cow or that animal has been stolen, that livestock, and being slaughtered, Mr. Speaker. So I think this is a menace that we must, Mr. Speaker, because what happens, you saw in Baringo the other day, it was a sad situation where a body, and I saw our senator from Baringo was in that funeral, where the body was being forced to be escorted by a paramilitary, Mr. Speaker, to the resting place, the former head teacher, Mr. Speaker, who was coincidental, Mr. Speaker. It is a sad story, and I know media have carried that story, where that teacher, Mr. Speaker, was shot in 1979 when he was young to be blind by a bullet of a cattle rustler. He was also killed by the same bullet the other day, Mr. Speaker, and he was buried. Even when he was supposed to rest in peace, the bandits and cattle rustlers were shooting all over. And the funeral had to be conducted. I was thinking, are we still in Kenya? Is this Gaza? Is this Ukraine, Mr. Speaker? Is it Pakistan, Mr. Speaker? Because if it has reached a level where somebody needs to be escorted to be buried, Mr. Speaker, therefore this is a clear pointer that this must be declared as a national disaster, Mr. Speaker. And I agree with the recommendation, Mr. Speaker. The only threat in that region, and Senator Dula has captured it very well, is insecurity or livestock banditry and cattle rustling, Mr. Speaker, sir, and also drought. So I empathize with the people from this region. If they are not suffering from cattle rustling, they are suffering from the drought, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we want to agree, even on the issue of livestock insurance cover, we must provide, Mr. Speaker, as a way forward. So that when people in Meru lose their lives or lose their livestock, we must give insurance to the lives that we have lost, unfortunately, and also give cover to the animals through livestock restocking and livestock insurance cover, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the third point that I wanted to make, Mr. Speaker, is on the issue, what is the way forward, apart from establishing this fund? My proposal is that we need to immediately reopen county security roads, Mr. Speaker. During Kibaki era, there was this road, if I can get right, from Ginya to Chemalingot, that would open. If that area, Mr. Speaker, is open all the way to Turkana with tarmac, all these other parts are open through infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, through county roads. I can assure you, when those places are open, Mr. Speaker, it will always open that area to civilization. And what that means, the issue of cattle or insecurity in that region will come down, Mr. Speaker. And that is why many people have taken the advantage of ignorance of our people in those areas to take advantage and use it to transform into a criminal enterprise, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, apart from roads, we need to look at the education. We need to improve in infrastructure of education, Mr. Speaker. Because when you open up, when people go to school, when people from those areas that are affected by cattle rustling and banditry, Mr. Speaker, when they go there, Mr. Speaker, and they go schools, we open schools, it will allow us to open their minds, open their hearts, Mr. Speaker, spiritually and through education, so that, Mr. Speaker, they are able, Mr. Speaker, to be part of the transformation of this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another number 3 is to call upon the national and county government, Mr. Speaker, to take affirmative action, especially in those areas. I expect these county governments that are mentioned from Baringo, Elgeyo Marakwet, Turkana, Isiolo, Marsabit, Laikipia, West Pokot, Meru, who are affected by the livestock menace, Mr. Speaker, to make an affirmative action. We want Meru County government to make affirmative action through employment, by ensuring that we employ youth specifically from those areas so that we open up them, Mr. Speaker, by building more ECD centers, vocational training centers in those areas so that we give the young people who are being misled, Mr. Speaker, to participate in cattle rustling and banditry and an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to ensure they are in a position to be part of the transformation of this country, Mr. Speaker. Even the national government, I want to challenge, there should be affirmative action, especially when we are recruiting any state officers, civil servants, the police, the GSU, the military, among others that are being hired by the national. We must make affirmative action. So even as we talk, I want to challenge Senator Cheptumo, even as we do the national fund to compensate on the victims, he should also amend this motion to include the county governments must brief the Senate. What affirmative action have they done in this Baringo, Elgeyo Marakwet, Turkana, Isiolo, Marsabit, Laikipia, West Pokot, and even your county, Mr. Speaker. And we are lucky today that we are sitting when we are discussing this motion, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, there must be a way of ensuring that we do, Mr. Speaker. Point number 4, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of water. We need to ensure water is taken to those areas, Mr. Speaker, so that we can do irrigation. I know the President has been pushing for environmental conservation and planting of more than 15 billion trees, Mr. Speaker. I want to challenge that we ensure access to water, Mr. Speaker, so that we can do irrigations on those areas. Mr. Speaker, can you believe in most of those areas it's very fertile? If you are to give them water to irrigate their crops, I can share with the issue of food security, Mr. Speaker, we shall be able to address the food security because that area, Mr. Speaker, in fact, is good for fruits because it is very hot, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of minerals, Mr. Speaker, can you believe most of these regions, I know there is GDC in some of those areas. There are many minerals, Mr. Speaker, in those areas. Most of these people do not want those areas to be open so that exploration and minerals can be mined for the benefit of those areas, Mr. Speaker. And you know, under the Mining Act in the local content, when you get the revenue, 70% goes to national government, 20% goes to county governments, and 10% goes to the local community under Community Development Agreement in the Mining Act of 2015. So I want to challenge Senator Cheptumo to also follow it up with the Ministry of Mining. Let us ensure we do mineral exploration, oil exploration, Mr. Speaker, but ensure, because it has a dangerous soft underbelly, Mr. Speaker, by ensuring that when we do mining and exploration of minerals in these stricken areas, Mr. Speaker, it gives them opportunity to get value for the local community, Mr. Speaker. Because even where I come from, issue of Kareba gold mine, Mr. Speaker, we had problems where a community in Chemaze was not getting the local through community development agreement where you have communities through 70-20%. 70 to national, 20 to county, and 10% to the local community, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge county governments in closing so that I allow my colleagues. Let us, Mr. Speaker, ensure we make sure the money that we devolve is used for the intended purposes, Mr. Speaker. Let us all, Elgeyo Marakwet, Baringo, and other areas, even in Meru, in Laikipia, let us ensure resources work. Mr. Speaker, if there is development, this menace of cattle rustling and banditry will stop if we ensure those areas are open, Mr. Speaker. So I want to challenge county governments, Mr. Speaker. I have seen a number of them because they call hardship, Mr. Speaker. For example, most of these counties are counties that are struggling because of where they are, but they get a lot of money. Mr. Speaker, are you aware Meru, Turkana, among other, of course, outside Kakamega, Garissa, Isiolo, and many other areas, Mr. Speaker, get a lot of money, over more than 15 billion, while Nandi, for example, we get 7.5 billion. But when you ask questions, Mr. Speaker, they find it uncomfortable, Mr. Speaker, and I want to challenge, because I saw individuals from Garissa County trying to answer me for raising questions, Mr. Speaker, about non-access to water, for example, in Garissa, where we have only water Bausa that supplies more than close to 1 million people in Garissa, for example, Mr. Speaker. There is no water in Garissa. When you go to Garissa Health, Mr. Speaker, former Provision General Hospital, there is no water, Mr. Speaker, and I question it. I was shocked that the county government and the county governor sponsored a lot of news media item over the weekend while I was busy non-deserving the people, Mr. Speaker. So we must call out, and I want to tell all governors, including governor from Kisii, that a senator is not only to oversight his own county. You can decide to oversight Nandi. We have right to oversight all 47 counties, Mr. Speaker. So I want to tell those people who sponsored media stories through the governor of Garissa and the county government and the water provision that I will not be intimidated, just like the rest of the senators. We shall do oversight. And that 12 billion that was allocated to Garissa in the last financial year, 2022-2023, they must provide water to the people of Garissa. They must provide health care to the people of Garissa. They must provide bursary. We are aware of the allegations that they are buying houses here in Isili and Kilifi. We have allegations, and I want to challenge ESCC and DCI to look at the most county governments that they are misusing and misappropriating funds to their advantage, Mr. Speaker. So I want to ask, instead of buying media spaces, instead of bribing allegations of bribing and buying media to respond and sponsoring ordinary wananchi to answer Senator Cherargei, Mr. Speaker. They should be busy providing water to the people, bursary, roads, so that we can fight these minutes of drought, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and therefore with those very, very remarks, we want to thank Senator Cheptumo for this wonderful motion. I hope to see it in fruition, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I beg to support, and I hope our brother Senator Kithure Kindiki and COG should come on board so that we ensure that we adopt this report of the motion. Asante sana, Mheshimiwa Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Chalgei. Senator Chalgei, you have actually proposed several amendments to the motion. This motion is now a property of the Senate of Kenya. It does no longer belong to Senator Cheptumo alone. So what you are proposing, you can even go ahead and also amend this motion to suit your thinking. So nothing is stopping you from making those amendments yourself. Of course, in agreement with the move of the motion. Next is Senator Okoiti Andrew Omtata. Oh, sorry, just a minute, Senator Omtata. Let us first acknowledge the visiting students from Mamangina University College in Kiambu County. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this morning of visiting students from Mamangina University College, Leadership and the Politics Club. The delegation comprises 40 students who are in the Senate for a one-day academic exposition. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. If I look at the membership present now, and the senator for Kiambu County is not around, the member who is close to these university students is none other than Senator Lemaletian Ezena. So I want to give you this opportunity to welcome them, maybe in 1 minute also.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I join the rest of my colleagues and the Honorable Chair in welcoming comrades to the upper house of Parliament. I want to assure them that their voice is fully represented in this house through me. And I want them to take a very keen note at the contributions being made by members here. You are very lucky because Kiambu County is very cosmopolitan, and I think it's within the municipality. Is it? Yeah? Metropolitan, sorry. Metropolis from the People's Senator. Feel at home. I hope you learn a lot. I hope you can see how the honorable members contribute. You know that Parliament has two houses. You're old enough to know that. The lower house, which is the National Assembly, and the upper house, which is the Senate, gain from the wisdom of the contributions here. And also know that you have rights as citizens to bring petitions to the floor of this house. Like currently, I'm holding several petitions on mental health and recommendations from various groups of young people on mental health, education, and climate change. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's proceed. Senator Omtata, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this very important motion. I'll not repeat what has been stated in terms of the devastating effects of this crime called mischaracterized as cattle rustling. An important thing I would like to say, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker, is that we need to locate this thing in the law. Cattle rustling is mischaracterized to the extent that even the law enforcement cannot deal with it. It should be in the penal code, and the same sanction that apply to robbery with violence should apply to this particular activity. It's robbery with violence, nothing else. people die, a lot of property is destroyed, and people are snatched their property. So, to give it a sexy title like cattle rustling is really a way of getting away from the real issue. There's no relationship that used to happen in the traditional days when somebody could raid maybe with a spear and whatever to steal a few cattle for balanced issues. I don't deny that there's a cultural dimension to it in certain areas, because when I was in Southern Sudan some time back, and I was dealing with the Catholic missionaries, I came across one missionary with a story that goes like, he used to have a very, very dedicated choir master, who was a young man who had gone to school. The guy was not married. Then one evening, the guy turns up in war regalia and comes to the priest and asks the priest for a blessing. He had a group of warriors. Then the priest asked, what is all this about? He said it was time for him to get married, and he had come with his age mates for a blessing from the priest because they were going to raid the Turkana of Kenya for cattle. There's a girl whom he had identified, but they were demanding a very high price of cattle that he did not have. So the only way you could get that girl was to go and raid cattle from the Turkana in Kenya. So if a choir master was doing that, maybe you could see the depth with which this thing may be as a cultural activity or driven by cultural activity. But what is important is that they were coming to raid cattle from Kenya. The question is, why are our borders porous? Because this crime of cattle rustling is an international crime. It's an organized international crime. People, criminal networks, sometimes use very advanced technologies to track information about where the cattle are, what markets are available, and stuff like that. And so they're able to move around and get animals and take them to markets, and they sell and dispose of. Secondly, when you look at our laws, you'll find that there's no law requiring identification of cattle or goats or sheep or any of these domestic animals at slaughterhouses and at markets. You'll go to a market and buy and sell an animal with no provisions for the identification of that animal. In my own local area, if you are on a market day, you'll go to the market and buy an animal. There's no requirement for any certification from where the animal came from to that market. They just exchange them the way they sell shirts. I think the time has come for us to come up with a law that will ensure that animals are traceable to their owners. If you're coming to sell an animal, it should be possible to trace the owner of that animal at the point of sale. That one might also help reduce the issue. The other thing I would like to address is that there is a protocol on the prevention, combating, and eradication of cattle rustling in East Africa. The last time I checked, only Uganda had signed that protocol. If you look at the protocol, it provides very, very good measures for containing cattle rustling across the borders, across international borders, and within the borders of a sovereign state like Kenya. So the failure to ratify this kind of thing also tells us that we are not serious with eradicating cattle rustling. And this was a thing that came up from the community and went beyond just the members of the East African community. It's supposed to cover 15 countries in the eastern region where there's rampant cattle rustling. So I would ask myself, how serious is our government or what is the commitment of our government to ending this menace when they cannot even sign on protocols that are designed to tap into international networks to address this problem? The other question I have, I've always asked myself, Uganda has largely contained cattle rustling through brute force. When somebody picks up a gun to go to another community to rob and kill and spoil, he is not a man to be handled or a woman to be handled with kid gloves, but I doubt whether women are very active in that area, although you have to be gender sensitive. So if somebody picks up a weapon to go and rob, in some country, in Uganda, if we are arrested, you are court-martialed because you are an armed combatant. They don't handle you with the kid gloves. Secondly, the response of the authorities is severe. The monopoly of violence must always stay with the state. I don't understand how the Kenyan state has lost the monopoly of violence in these areas where we have got rampant cattle rustling. The other day I read in the newspaper that, the police air wing helicopters have been grounded because of mismanagement and other things. So we can only the police can only work on land. I would expect the police to be armed with helicopter gunships so that when there is an attack, they go and strafe the area with bullets. The state must maintain the monopoly of violence. But the Kenyan state has chosen to handle this problem with kid gloves. And it would be a situation whereby the elite and maybe people who control the deep state are the people who are behind the cattle rustling. Because how do you steal almost 1,000 cows and nobody sees them? It's practically impossible. I would expect a police air wing or the stock theft to be armed with the attack helicopters. So that when these people take the animals, go and shoot them plus the animals. Do that 2-3 times, they will get scared. But these kid gloves of making the Minister for Interior giving us pronunciation, trying to give threats through a soprano voice, does not add up. His body language does not even convince you that the man is serious. Let us see action, because lives of Kenyans are being lost, property of Kenyans is being destroyed, and we cannot continue the way we have been continuing. The blame lies squarely at the Kenyan state. It cannot demonstrate any single action it has taken to demonstrate that when you come to violence, we are the masters of violence. I don't see. And unless we get to the point whereby the state has a monopoly of violence, armed gangs will keep roaming around and killing people. We don't want to be Haiti, where the state has lost the monopoly of violence to gangs. And if we don't act in time, these so-called cattle rustlers can morph into other things. Because they'll be heavily armed, they can decide to declare a republic of their own within the area. What will we do? Let us nip this thing in the bud. Let us crush and destroy the cattle rustlers. And my proposal is that we should not be talking of setting up funds and whatever. There is already a provision in law for compensation for victims of crime. And so the state should be held accountable to compensate victims of crime. I support the motion, and I call on the Kenyan state to step up to the plate and up its act. I have not seen anything that has been done to fight cattle rustling. The so-called disarmaments end up nowhere. Sometimes they create an imbalance. You disarm one community, you leave another unarmed, and the armed community comes to run roughshod over the community that has been disarmed. So with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you for the opportunity you have given me to address this House, and I support the motion, and I thank Senator Cherargei.
Senator Mtata, before you leave the floor,
Yes, Mr.
I
Speaker,
want to question you. Standing on the 101.3, it shall be out of order to use offensive or insulting language, whether in respect of senators or other persons. So in your contribution, you have stated that a certain individual, a certain citizen of this republic has a soprano voice. So can you kindly withdraw that statement?
It's a statement. It's a statement.
Substantiate whether you are able to.
Mr. Speaker, sir, you can't substantiate the obvious. It's a statement of fact, a descriptive statement of fact. It's not an insult. It's a statement of fact. But if it is offensive, then I withdraw it and apologize.
Proceed and conclude.
So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I've not seen any action that the state has taken other than issuing baseless threats against bandits to restore the balance of arms where the state has the monopoly of violence over criminal gangs. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you for the opportunity and for the guidance. And I was standing with Senator Cherargei, the Lion of Nandi, for the great input he has given us. I also thank Senator Dulo, the Queen of Isiolo, for the informative information she has given us, and I support the motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
God bless
Mtata.
us.
Next is Senator Joe Nyutu, Moranga Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. And I rise to support the motion by Senator Cheptumo, who has just gotten back to the House. Mr. Speaker, right from the wording of this particular motion, that, Mr. Speaker, there are very many negative socio-economic impact on the things that, on the lives of the people affected by banditry and cattle rustling, Mr. Speaker. This is a very big social problem, Mr. Speaker, where we have people displaced, where we have orphans that would otherwise have been children with their parents, Mr. Speaker, where we have widowers, Mr. Speaker, and this is a matter that needs to be taken very seriously by the government, and that is why I rise to support that we declare this motion that states that seeks declaration of cattle rustling and banditry as a national disaster, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, the Honorable C.S. Kindiki, for what he has, for his efforts, Mr. Speaker, that he has shown over the short period of time that he has been Cabinet Secretary in this particular ministry. Mr. Speaker, we have seen him even visit the grounds where these offenses happen, Mr. Speaker. And this is a job well done. We see a coordinated Cabinet Secretary, Mr. Speaker. But I think there are many other things. There is a lot of room for improvement, Mr. Speaker, where if the CS and the ministry was going, Mr. Speaker, to improve on some of the suggestions that we have, and I'm glad that you have advised that we can introduce amendments to this particular motion, Mr. Speaker. I think one of the challenges that we have been having in trying to arrest banditry and cattle rustling, Mr. Speaker, is where we send the security forces. We send our police officers, Mr. Speaker, and it has been established that I don't know why this tradition has been there, that the askaris that we send to these particular areas, Mr. Speaker, sometimes are newly recruited and trained askaris, newly posted askaris, Mr. Speaker, where they find the terrain very challenging, Mr. Speaker. I think I would want to suggest that they form a special a special group of askaris, Mr. Speaker, and basically and mostly those drawn from those areas. We have askaris, we have young men and women that have grown up in these bandit-prone areas, Mr. Speaker, and who are very conversant with this type of terrains that we have in those particular areas, Mr. Speaker. I would want to propose and suggest to the CS that they can pick a special, they can make a special wing, basically comprising officers who have grown up in those areas, Mr. Speaker, so that they will be able to handle that terrain. They'll be able, Mr. Speaker, to be superior in handling these bandits, Mr. Speaker. And I think that is something that is doable because we can be able to identify where people come from even when they are serving in the forces or in the service, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, banditry and cattle rustling over the years has appeared like something that cannot be arrested. But Mr. Speaker, I remember that some years back we had a problem with a group that was calling itself Sabaot Land Defense Force, SLDF, Mr. Speaker, that gave this country, and especially Kenyans living around Mount Elgon, a very great problem for a number of years, Mr. Speaker. And when enough was enough, and the army was deployed to go and arrest that problem, Mr. Speaker, it took only a few months, and the leader of that particular gang was actually killed, Mr. Speaker. I do not know why the leaders from these areas do not support or are always opposed to the deployment of the armed forces to go and arrest that particular menace, Mr. Speaker. I think this is something that should be highly thought about so that we do not have a perennial problem. This is something that can be done. This is a problem that can be arrested, Mr. Speaker, and I suggest that we look at the possibility of posting or deploying the army, Mr. Speaker, to go and arrest this problem, Mr. Speaker. I have listened to Senator Cheralge indicating, and I think I concur with him, that there could be people, sometimes even in Parliament, Mr. Speaker, that support this cattle rustling for the commercial benefits that they get from this, Mr. Speaker. I think we should have a special investigative team, Mr. Speaker, to investigate and see who funds, if at all, these rustlers, Mr. Speaker, so that whoever it is, we cannot continue having our people killed. We cannot continue seeing our people lose their life investments in their livestock that they keep, Mr. Speaker, just because there are some people that could be powerful somewhere that support this particular problem, Mr. Speaker, or this banditry. Mr. Speaker, let us establish a special investigative group that will investigate, establish who funds these people, who supports these people, who gives these people protection, political or otherwise, Mr. Speaker, so that we can be able to deal with this problem once and for all. Most of these animals, Madam Speaker now, most of these animals, when stolen, they are transported to big towns and cities where they are slaughtered and sold as meat to city residents, Madam Speaker. I think we need to tighten the noose. We need to have some very good programs on transportation of animals. We should be able to establish the source of animals transported on a daily basis, Madam Speaker, so that if we have reason to believe that the animals being transported are animals that could have been stolen, then I think we can have an intervention before these animals reach the market. Because if there was not going to be any market for these stolen animals, then of course, Madam Speaker, we would not have people stealing these animals, and that way we would be able to arrest this problem, Madam Speaker, because these animals are not, once stolen, they are not kept by the bandits. They are transported for slaughtering. We should be able to come up with a method of seeing to it that all the animals in transit are animals that have been acquired genuinely, Madam Speaker. These bandits always have some very sophisticated firearms. We do not manufacture firearms in this country. The last time I checked, we were not manufacturing firearms. How do these firearms get into our country, Madam Speaker? I think that is a question that we need to ask ourselves. How do these firearms get into our country? I mean, we have only manned entry points. Why do these firearms enter our country? Who influences this illegal entry? Because there must be some collusion somewhere. It cannot be that these firearms just get into the country. I think we also need to investigate and know who colludes with the illegal importers of firearms that eventually get into the hands of these bandits, Madam Speaker. I think I want to really support the idea of establishing a special fund to deal with this matter, because we need to put up schools in these areas. We need to put up hospitals in these areas, Madam Speaker. We need to finance these people. We need to sensitize the people living in these areas, Madam Speaker, so that they can be able to know when a young man is growing and when they have been taken to school, they should be sensitized. They should know that opportunities exist. That if you go to school, you do not have to rely on banditry in order for you to be gainfully employed, Madam Speaker. And I think this funding will be of utmost importance. We need to know, we also need to train our people that we do not, to also carry out, rearing of animals in a better way, in a way that can also be profitable to them. And I think this fund will go a long way if established as proposed in this particular motion. And Madam Speaker, I can see the yellow light from the clerk's desk. I do not want to continue, but I want to say that this is one of the most progressive motions that we have had in this particular house in the recent past, and I want to thank Senator Cheptumo for this well-thought motion, and to which we will be introducing amendments as advised by the Deputy Speaker. Madam Speaker, I support this motion. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Joe Nyoto. Senator Beatrice Akinyi Ogola.
Madam Speaker, as I rise to support the motion on cattle rustling and banditry, Madam Speaker, I want to say from the onset that banditry in itself and cattle rustling is an act of criminality from the word go. Madam Speaker, it looks like these are organized criminal activities, that specifically just points to an organized way of doing business. And to me, Madam Speaker, it is somebody's business. Madam Speaker, sometimes back, when there were issues of piracy in the ocean and our water bodies, somebody made a remark that convinced me that pirates cannot survive and do their business without support from the ground. And Madam Speaker, I relate that with the issue, the criminality of banditry and cattle rustling. Madam Speaker, it is a criminal and must be dealt with just the way other organized criminal activities are dealt with. Madam Speaker, the issue, the act of banditry and cattle disrupts lives. There are activities that disrupts livelihoods of the people, they result in loss of life. They disrupt life, Madam Speaker, to the extent that schools cannot go on. And Madam Speaker, with the policy we have in this Republic of Education for All, it means that there are certain regions that do not have their school calendars going on as expected. And Madam Speaker, finally, they do the same examinations and they are rated just like other Kenyans. And Madam Speaker, that is something that must concern us as a people, as leadership, as parliament, as the executive. Madam Speaker, because of this criminality, and as I've said, schools are disrupted. Madam Speaker, health services to the people are disrupted, because once they are displaced, it means that the people who have been displaced cannot get the usual services that they get. So what happens to them when they fall sick, Madam Speaker? What happens to the ones that go to school? What happens to their normal businesses, Madam Speaker? And Madam Speaker, because banditry and castle rustling results in displacement of people, Madam Speaker, when even personnel are their advertisement, even in the local county governments in those areas, or the national government as a whole, there are people who always fear going for jobs in those areas. And Madam Speaker, that basically means that the people where cattle rustling and banditry is prone lacked the skilled, the equitable skills that other regions get from all Kenyans, Madam Speaker, because in this republic, anybody can work elsewhere. Madam Speaker, I've often heard, even in our villages, young men who'd want to venture in going and work in those areas, they are hesitant when adverts are made. And Madam Speaker, that means these skills, these people in those areas cannot get the required skills that they should be having. Madam Speaker, cattle rustling, as I've said, being a criminality, I want to state that investigations must be done to unearth the masterminds of these activities. Because to me, Madam Speaker, banditry should be treated as an extreme act of criminality. And so there must be investigations from the investigative arm of this government so that the masterminds of these criminal gangs are unearthed. And Madam Speaker, just as we have a policy where proceeds from even criminal issues like money laundering are mapped and returned back to the state, why can't investigations be done? Proceeds from such acts of banditry and cattle rustling must be mapped, and declarations must be made about those proceeds so that they are sunk back into the economy of this country. And Madam Speaker, as the people behind these criminal activities are mapped, I want to suggest, Madam Speaker, that they must also be named and shamed. Madam Speaker, because they are causing great loss to our people, they are creating great disruption of activities to our people, and so other than investigations being done, these people must be named, and Madam Speaker, they must be shamed, and Madam Speaker, they must also face they must also be prosecuted. They must face the law. Madam Speaker, in areas where in my constituency, there has been a practice where people wake up one day and we just find sheep, goats, and cattle knifed in the middle of the night. That has been a usual occurrence sometimes back in my constituency in Dewa. And those are the criminal gangs we are talking about. Because what would be the purpose of such acts of criminality? And Madam Speaker, we are saying, as I support this motion, we want to say that the reasons for such activities must also be brought to book. Madam Speaker, the issue of castle rustling, other than areas that Senator Sheptumo mentioned and other senators have mentioned, there has been the usual practice of the conflicts around Sondu and Nyakach. And Madam Speaker, when you look at them, sometimes they're not just have an objective of picking the cattle, but they have deeper objective of causing hostilities between communities that have otherwise lived very peacefully. Madam Speaker, an example of Sondu I've given, we have the Luos and the Kalenjins that have lived there. They have intermarried. They go to the same market. They live happily every day. They trade together. They intermarry. They marry their girls. We marry their girls. But one day, on a night, you just wake up and find people have stormed the other community and causing unnecessarily conflict. And that is why I say, Madam Speaker, those are acts of criminality. Those are acts that must be investigated. And Madam Speaker, as a country, we cannot keep on talking about this banditry, about this cattle rustling, government to government. When, Madam Speaker, in this country, we are convinced that our investigative arm is very skilled. Why is it that they are not able to unearth the mastermind of these criminal activities? Why is it that this is encouraged? Is it because somebody benefits from this criminality? And if somebody is benefiting from this criminality, Madam Speaker, those people should be investigated, their names picked out, and as I've said, they must be named and shamed. Madam Speaker, the other idea that is always surrounding this criminality is that the proceeds from these criminal gangs are invested elsewhere in the country. Just before me, the Honorable Senator Rage, I think, mentioned about certain development coming up in our urban centers, and it is assumed those are proceeds from those areas. Madam Speaker, this is a country of values. We are talking about hard work. We are talking about determination. We are talking about, as I've said, hard work. How do we allow proceeds of such criminal activities to be the sources of development in some of these urban centers? What are we teaching to our young people? Look at the public gallery, and I see very young, promising Kenyans seated there. But here we are saying there are people who pick proceeds from such criminal activities and invest back into our societies. Madam Speaker, because of the lives that have been lost on banditry, because of the lives that have been lost on castle rustling, because of the injuries that have been caused, Madam Speaker, because of the disruption of the education standard institutions and activities in those prone areas, because of the disruption of health services in those areas, Madam Speaker, I support that banditry, castle rustling is an act of criminality, and so must be investigated, and Madam Speaker, it should be declared a national disaster. Madam Speaker, I support.
Thank you, Senator Beatrice. Senator Danson Mungatana.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this motion. Madam Speaker, this motion seeks, number one, to declare that cattle rustling is a national disaster. Number two, it seeks that to establish a national task force. Number three, it seeks that we create a special fund. Madam Speaker, in debating this motion and in supporting this motion, I wanted to ask the Honorable member, sponsor, the Honorable Chair of Defense, Senator, who has brought this, to also think of another angle to this issues of cattle rustling. Madam Speaker, it is true that previous speakers have mentioned certain counties. They have mentioned Samburu, they have mentioned Baringo, Elgeyo Marakwet, and so on, that have the highest incidences of cattle rustling. Madam Speaker, even if we declare this a national disaster, even if we set up a national task force, even if we set up a special fund to deal with this cattle rustling, Madam Speaker, there is another issue, which is the regional cooperation that is required for us to be able to truly deal with this menace. Madam Speaker, cattle rustling has emerged and it has transformed itself from being a mere cultural practice, Madam Speaker, into an international organized crime. And Madam Speaker, the players are securing huge profits from supporting and sponsoring this criminal activity. It is no longer, Madam Speaker, the normal cultural thing that used to happen in them days, that people would go to try and get some cattle from somewhere so that they can pay bride price. Madam Speaker, it has become a business, not just national business, but an international crime business. In fact, it's organized crime, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the efforts that our government has done through the current Minister for Internal Security. Madam Speaker, the Minister has been seen there many times in that entire belt, making all efforts to be present and making declarations. But Madam Speaker, even if you disarm one community, only one community on the side of Kenya, and then you don't disarm the other communities on the neighboring countries, Madam Speaker, we will be doing a zero-sum game. Madam Speaker, it is time that we really started thinking about regional cooperation. It is time that we really put a thought into what 3 internal security ministers from Uganda, from up here in Ethiopia and Kenya, when they meet at those borders, what they will be able to achieve as a team, as opposed to when we are acting alone, as opposed to when we are putting measures alone. Because when we do that, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, in fact, what happens is some of our communities which are bordering in those areas, their guns are taken away, their protection capacity is taken away, and so the other side who are doing cross-border raids are able to come in and do the very criminal activity now against us as Kenyans. Madam Speaker, something needs to be done in terms of regional cooperation. Having served and still serving as the head of delegation of this parliament and to the Pan-African, I have seen the strength of coming together. When African nations come together, Madam Speaker, whether be it in the southern area or in the southern caucus, the eastern caucus, western or northern caucus, a lot of things can happen. Recently, Madam Speaker, and the recent development, we have seen regional cooperation when we are proposing the candidacy of Raila Odinga as African Union Commission Chair. Madam Speaker, you have seen he himself speaking to the media, telling people that he has been able to meet various heads of state and he has the support of the Kenya's head of state. Madam Speaker, the kind of effort and energy that is being put towards the candidacy of one person, Madam Speaker, is not the kind of effort and energy that we are seeing in the region to eliminate things that affect normal people like cattle rustling. Madam Speaker, if presidents can meet to discuss candidature, and which is very important, Madam Speaker, if presidents can meet to discuss candidature of one person, I don't see why presidents cannot meet, Madam Speaker, to discuss the issue of the protocol, Madam Speaker. This protocol has been there since 2008. 2008. They will meet to discuss climate change. They will meet to discuss the normal Eastern African region issues. In fact, the Eastern African Parliament is in session here in Nairobi. But Madam Speaker, cattle rustling is not an issue. Why? Because it has not been given the kind of weight that it's supposed to be given. And Madam Speaker, even if Kenya does what? Alone, we will not be able to eliminate. Because these people just cross the border. The real bandits, they are heavily supported in terms of arms, in terms of cash. They are heavily supported, Madam Speaker. They will just cross over. And once they cross over, our internal security minister has no jurisdiction on the other side. Our Inspector General of Police has no jurisdiction on the other side. Our army has no jurisdiction on the other side. All they'll do is to wait and wait on for a while. Once our security forces retreat, they will come back and do the same thing that they were doing. So, Madam Speaker, I'm emphasizing one point. The protocol on the prevention, combating, and eradication of cattle rustling in Eastern Africa must be signed. It must be signed, Madam Speaker. And it must be ratified. In fact, Madam Speaker, from the records of the East African Police Chiefs Cooperation Organization, the EAPCO, it is only Uganda, the nation of Uganda, that has ratified this protocol. What is happening for Kenya? And Kenya here, we are badly affected. Why not ratify that? I hope and I pray that the Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, is listening into this debate, because our people are suffering. If Uganda is willing to do it, why not Kenya ratify this protocol? Why? This protocol is going to enhance regional cooperation. Madam Speaker, it is also going to harmonize the legislations around this place, around that space, because we'll need to have a law that will be effective both in Uganda, both in Kenya. We'll need to have a law that will be effective in Tanzania. It will be effective in the other side of Ethiopia. Madam Speaker, the Eastern African Assembly needs to have a law, a protocol, a treaty of sorts that can mean equal force. If we say we are mobilizing against these bandits on the side of Kenya, the internal security minister is mobilizing on the side of Uganda. The other one is mobilizing on the side of South Sudan. The other one is mobilizing on the side of Ethiopia. Madam Speaker, these people will be cornered. There will be no opportunity for them to escape. And we will deal with this matter if we harmonize the cooperation in dealing with cattle rustling, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, legislation harmonization will also help deal with this matter. Madam Speaker, identifying these livestock, we have to have use of technology. If, Madam Speaker, we are able to identify using technology that these are the animals which are from Kenya and they have been taken to the other side, and there is a treaty, a protocol that exists between these countries, then, Madam Speaker, we are able to deal with this matter in a holistic fashion. And we must make it very painful for those people who are profiting from these proceeds. Madam Speaker, in the United States, people who are involved in terrorism, people who are suspected to be involved in that kind of illegal trade, Madam Speaker, their assets are frozen. Their illicit profits are frozen. Initially, Madam Speaker, they used to ban, like if it is dollars, it's banned. And because it's illicit money that is from drugs and from terrorism. But nowadays, Madam Speaker, those assets are frozen. And people who are victims of those kinds of activities, they are able to be paid off from those funds. So, Madam Speaker, the proposal here to set up a fund is a good proposal, but we should look at it from the fact that there are people who are profiting from sponsoring cattle rustling. And these people, Madam Speaker, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, South Sudan, Ethiopia, all these countries around the Eastern Africa, they have intelligence, they have collaboration, they have police chiefs. And if this protocol is signed, they will be able to mobilize their intelligence resources to trace the people who are involved, Madam Speaker, to get hold of their assets, Madam Speaker, to freeze those assets. And from those frozen assets, Madam Speaker, which are a lot, they will be able, Madam Speaker, to settle victims of cattle rustling. Madam Speaker, when you watch the news and you see people moving, whole families, you see schools abandoned, hospitals, Madam Speaker, people sleeping in the open, Madam Speaker, women crying. It is a heartbreaking situation. Some of us may not have that kind of cattle rustling, but we have experienced a lot of violence in the past in Tana River County. And I know, Madam Speaker, how bad it can affect. When we have population migration of poor people, it is so bad, it is so heartbreaking, Madam Speaker. And we pray that the countries, especially Kenya, will take the lead. Madam Speaker, Kenya affects a lot of things that happen in this East Africa. Madam Speaker, our budget alone is a combination of all these budgets around East Africa. So what we say matters. If the Prime Cabinet Secretary can take up this matter of cattle rustling, can start rounding up fellow ministers of Foreign Affairs, can loop in the Minister for Internal Security, who then rounds up the fellow ministers for internal security. Madam Speaker, it is possible for us to do a regional approach to this problem. It is possible for us to bring a solution. It is possible for us to corner these rustlers. It is possible for us to freeze the assets of people who are involved in this illicit trade. Madam Speaker, if we do this and we do it well, I am sure there will be no space to run for those who are sponsoring these activities for personal profit. Madam Speaker, otherwise I really support this motion. I think it has brought the discussion to the fore. What needs to be done, Madam Speaker, the action that needs to be taken so that we can help solve the problem of the common people experiencing in that area of the North Rift. I thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to support.
Thank you, Senator Danson. Senator Lemaletian Hezena.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise to add my voice to this very timely motion, given the dire situation of the wanton destruction of properties and loss of lives in Samburu for the past few days, which led to the loss of our beloved MCA, Member of County Assembly, who was killed just for being an advocate for peace and for representing his people very strongly. Madam Speaker, and they normally say that when the mouse laughs at the cat, there is a hole nearby. I remember the president's remarks while he was in Baragoi County, Baragoi in Samburu County, and as soon as he had warned the bandits and threatened them of very dire, serious consequences of their actions, immediately he landed in Nairobi. There was an attack on the same day, the following day, consequently for 3 days. That was definitely a mouse laughing at the cat. And that, Madam Speaker, is proof enough that these bandits are not operating in the clouds. They definitely have huge sponsors. And on that regard, I want to validate my colleagues' concerns that we should no longer decorate this as normal banditry, but a very well-organized crime syndicate that could have even maybe foreign support from criminals within our thickets in the northern parts of Kenya. And I know that from the Oxford Dictionary, the definition of a disaster is a sudden accident or natural catastrophe that causes great loss and life. Madam Speaker, we have lost uncountable people in Samburu County and in many counties in the northern parts of Kenya. This banditry is no longer the normal cultural game that they used to call it. It has evolved and metamorphosed over the years into a very deadly criminal gang. We remember at one point that, when His Excellency Natembea was the regional commissioner, there was a report that was put before our nation that some of these criminal entities had weapons that are very much stronger than the weapons owned by the government. Madam Speaker, it should worry each one of us that every time when there is a disarmament happening in any of the counties in the north, within a week, there is a very deadly attack. That means there is a very constant and safe supply of weapons because the government conducts a very thorough disarmament exercise. I know this because I've lived here, I grew up here, and I know how these things are done, especially by the rapid deployment units. And Madam Speaker, when we are talking about organized criminal gangs within our nation that have weapons that are more powerful than the government, that is enough to qualify them as a terrorist group. This is a small terrorist group that is evolving, and we know that terror groups like even the recent Houthis in the Red Sea, in the Mediterranean, were at some point just a small group that was rebelling within its country. These are rebels because they are defying the law, they are operating on no law, and they have a complete and sheer disregard for human lives and the laws of the land. Madam Speaker, when you analyze the operations of these bandits, the weaponry, the evolution into land grabbing, the conquering of territories and internal displacement of people, it is enough to say that business is booming somewhere. The country and the executive needs to put more effort in utilizing its security forces and especially the intelligence of our country to ensure that they have all information concerning especially who is profiteering from this criminal organization. Madam Speaker, we have lost so many breadwinners. We have led our people into abject poverty. We have caused internal displacements. As we speak, Samburus are not shanty people. Samburus do not live in shanty places. We live in vast lands. We have vast lands. We might be financially poor, but we normally have land. As we speak, so many of our people in Samburu County are still living in Maralal, in the most shantiest places, in houses made of nylon, just because they have been internally displaced by people who are our neighbors. Madam Speaker, it should also not be qualified as a tribal war. It needs to be publicly declared that this is a terror group, regardless of what pastoralist nomadic community these people are coming from. Madam Speaker, I join my colleagues also to say that these families deserve compensation, because I do not imagine that today I have everything, I have my livestock, I have my land, and tomorrow I'm a beggar in the streets of Maralal or Isiolo just because somebody had more capacity than the one who was supposed to protect me and sent me into a shanty ghetto. Madam Speaker, thirdly, I want to talk about an alternative solution that maybe should be included. And I like that this motion comes in at a time when we are there is a bill on the floor of the House of, I think, the Livestock and Prevention bill by Senator of Nandi, Senator Cherargei. And Madam Speaker, that just tells you how much the pastoralist senators in this House are so much dedicated in ensuring that we restore order among our people. Madam Speaker, I propose that these ministries, and I implore them that the ministries work together in conjunction. For example, the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Roads and Infrastructure can work together and give us massive major roads, linking roads. Because I remember I studied in St. Teresa's Wamba in Samburu East, which is in near Isiolo. And I remember there were times we would lose our own classmates to banditry. Why? Because by the time I was in high school, the Great North Road from Isiolo to Merele to Marsabit and Moyale were never constructed. The roads were later on launched when we were done with school. Madam Speaker, I want to affirm and assure the presidency and the executive that road brought a lot of development in the northern parts of Kenya. The banditry along that road reduced. There were centers coming up. Students were going to schools. My school, for example, St. Teresa's only had students from within Isiolo, Meru, and Samburu County and Marsabit County. And Madam Speaker, right now, I was just there and I'm going there for the Women's Day this weekend. And Madam Speaker, there are students from all over studying in that prestigious school, which was locked off by inaccessibility. Bishop Cavalera School, also in Marsabit County. I am I'm a witness that development and opening of these roads will secure the region. When we open up, for example, the Maralal-Baragoi route, we will have a lot of centers coming up. We will have more surveillance. We will have our security forces and agencies traveling very smoothly, relying timely information. Because sometimes you might gather intelligence and information, but it takes years to reach to the relevant authorities to utilize it. There are so many schools that are displaced right now, and some are very closed. Several schools in Samburu West and Samburu North constituencies have been closed. When we have this road, I am very sure, and I even assure the President of Kenya, His Excellency William Ruto, that once we have that road, I am very sure a lot will heal the region. Madam Speaker, we know that there is that notorious belt within Samburu County, which is bordering Baringo and West Pokot and Turkana County. The road actually passes through that belt. And you can imagine, it will develop an open and linking infrastructure between the four counties, Laikipia included. The other day, our retired president, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, gave us a road from Nyahururu to Maralal. Today, I can go with my small Mercedes-Benz from Nyahururu to Maralal town. The car will not be spoiled, and the car will not, and I will not be attacked. So we have seen the consequences of development. We have done so many things over and over again. We have done disarmament. We have done people have been sentenced. We have arrested people who have been accused of taking part in banditry. But these have not borne any fruits. How about we change tact and open up the region for development? I will be very excited when the president or the executive gives us, through the Ministry of Irrigation, I'll be very happy when they give us water and boreholes so that I can take my people into agriculture, and then we can reduce the number of livestock to avoid attracting our enemies or thieves. Madam Speaker, I am very sure that also the livestock that has been stolen is always ending up somewhere. The government needs to, the executive needs to give us a true data of where this livestock has been going. Has it been going to Kenya Meat Commission? And who are the major importers of beef from Kenya? Then that way we can develop a linkage between the business of beef and the banditry. Lastly, but not least, Madam Speaker, there are also some notorious multinational organizations and corporations operating in the north. I know that so many of them are involved in carbon trading, and I know that there are no sufficient laws in this country to regulate the harvesting, the trading and use of carbon credits. I know that right now the world is thirsting on our very lush green forest and tampered and polluted forest for carbon credits. When the government regulates this multinational corporation, which I will not be surprised will have a very huge stake in in the grabbing of these lands and encroachment into the pastoralist land, leading us to squeeze our livestock and operations within very small constricted spaces, and we are not used to that. Madam Speaker, I want the government to ensure they have very serious surveillance on this multinational corporation, and in that regard, they should be operating within a certain limit. And I end by saying that Kenya is a sovereign state and must be treated and respected as such. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Hezena, thank you for your contribution. The Speaker is still pondering over your small Mercedes-Benz. Yes, Honorable Senator. Senator, I see there are no other senators who would wish to contribute to this motion. I would now want to invite the mover of the motion to reply. Senator Cheptumo, hold on a minute. Can you approach the clerk's desk?
Madam Speaker, given the importance of this motion, my two colleagues have walked in also, and one of them actually is a member from some of those areas which are affected by cattle rustling. I would plead that you can give them a moment to make contribution on this motion.
Honorable Senators, this is an exceptional request, and I will allow it because of the counties that you come from. But in future dates, you should be on your seat and pressing the button so that we can see your intention to speak to the motion. So I'll invite Senator Murgo to contribute.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to be able to add my voice to those of my colleagues. This situation and subject has been a subject that has been, I'm sure, in these corridors and houses, both houses, and in our minds for a long time, in addition to being news here and there. But at this time, I would wish that something and a different approach be used to be able to really cap this thing down, if not stamp it out to be a thing of the past. Because this situation has affected a lot of lives negatively. It has made it impossible for children to go to school. It has shifted situations from one side to another. You can imagine a family that is just made to move from their home. You think of children, you think of women, you think of situations, pregnant women and so on, that have to move out of their homes and relocate into a situation that is unknown and is unusual or strange or new to them, and the health hazards therein. You talk of sometimes being in the cold, sometimes being rained on, and sometimes going without food, because movements make food situations be unstable. And therefore, a lot of sufferings physically has actually been realized by these people from time to time. And why I say that it should be a thing of the past is because it may be thought to be traditional, but it is no longer a tradition now because it is actually graduating into many new situations and settings. For example, it is graduating into land issues, which wasn't there before. It is graduating into material things, such as whatever is available in an area. One group or one community claims or terrorizes the other to be able to benefit from whatever is available in a given area. Grass and water used to be a very common source of conflict, but it is not that now. It is different. And then you find that there are even senseless killings, that people just get killed for no reason. You can imagine somebody riding on a motorbike and gets killed on the road or a path just like that, not having a goat, not having a cow, not having anything, and they don't even take anything. They just kill and walk away. So.
Ili kupata uchungu mtamu kama sikiza tuni yako, bonyeza *812 504 hash.
Je, wajua kuwa kuna uchungu mtamu? Bwana mmoja akaona kipepeo kichanga kikijikakamua kutoka nje ya shimo la ukuni. Akakitazama kwa huruma mno, akahisi uchungu kwa niaba yacho. Mwisho akaamua kukisaidia.
Kupata uchungu mtamu kama sikiza tune, bonyeza *812 504 hash. *812 504 hash.
我跟军管会已经了解情况了。虽然说程丽华力主重判，但是以你的情况，应该是10年左右，地方你都可以进去。
我就要在这等着。计算机处理错误，计算机处理错误。检修人员失控就位，查看电路，保护一线。
红号太阳故障，3号自动电磁管烧毁，有一干员投入正常排查，多点。
What are demons?
Demons are ni maroho in a simpler language.
Mtu ameingiwa na mapepo. Yes. Pepo kwanza inaingianga aje kwa mtu?
The things that gives a loophole is when someone, especially who is a Christian, gets to sin, and someone who is not as a Christian maybe engages into an altar. An altar that then serves a certain purpose.
Watu wanaingia kila shimo, watu wanaingia kila mahali. Kuna jeshi nataka kuomoka at any expense. They don't care what will be done. They don't want to read the Bible, but they want results that are biblical.
Good afternoon. You are in time for the lunchtime news. A very warm welcome to the broadcast. My name is Irene Mchuma Odem. On sign language interpretation this afternoon, we have Anne Wangeshi. Now, we begin with the health concerns this afternoon. We begin from the county of Kisumu, where we have the regional